Good evening, this is Tim Johnson, and the Brattleboro Select Board is next here on BCTV. In fact, we apologize for the brief period of technical adjustment that has just taken place. Since the board has been ready to meet, without further ado, we bring you tonight's Brattleboro Select Board meeting.
Thank you, Tim. We're here for the September 3rd, 2013 meeting of the Brattleboro Select Board. We know that the meeting has been officially warned because we've already been into executive session and have risen from executive session. So the first item on the agenda is to approve the minutes from August 20th. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve the minutes from August 20th as presented. Are there any comments, edits, suggestions about those minutes from anybody on the board or anybody who's in attendance? Hearing none. All those in favor of adopting the minutes from August 20th, 2013, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. The next matter on the agenda are the chair's remarks. I was going to start this evening by speaking about the news from Vermont Yankee, but I have to start instead by noting that on Saturday I saw sheep grazing on Solar Hill. And so the mystery about why there's a field fence around the solar panels on Solar Hill appears to have been solved. I guess that shows we're one of the preeminent towns in rural America. Although the sheep appeared to have been gone, or at least I couldn't find them on Sunday. So I wonder if you need a zoning permit in order to graze sheep on Western Avenue in Brattleboro. Oh, I got a note saying they don't have a permit. We do look forward to seeing the sheep again on Western Avenue, along with the chickens that are on the next two corners. I guess the big news is that we did hear last week that Entergy is not going to continue operating Vermont Yankee after 2014. When I was thinking about what I would say about that, the first thing that came to mind is that 2.5 years ago, when I was running for select board, we had candidates forum, and every candidate across the table from every side of the political spectrum spoke in favor of closing the plant. And so we actually did have that year as well the vote on the VY resolution, and I'd remind everybody of the numbers of that. There were 1,097 people in Brattleboro who voted in favor of the resolution that called for closing and cleaning up of the plant, and 438 people in Brattleboro who voted against it. So that was more than a 2-to-1 margin of people who voted in favor of that closure. It certainly is the culmination of years of effort by people who've been hoping to see transition to clean and safe and green energy. And we want to congratulate everybody who participated in that effort. The things that I've heard people in government saying really have focused on our participation going forward, both in safety efforts on the one hand, to try to make sure that the plant is maintained safely and cleaned up promptly, and also making sure that any economic dislocation that occurs as a result of that closure is mitigated to the extent possible. We've been engaged in significant efforts here, participating with CEVEDS and with other economic development agencies, and I've asked Patrick during his comments to speak a little bit about the economic development efforts that we've been supporting. One of the things that I've heard quite a bit is that sometimes high-tech businesses in the community note that there's a lack of skilled labor available, and it is the Vermont Yankee employee pool, a very skilled labor pool, and we certainly hope that they will remain in the community and assist in going forward with continued economic development. We're a strong and resilient community, and we look forward to continued economic strength and economic growth. I would also note in these comments that still outstanding is the work up at Strand Avenue. And I'm going to ask Mr. Barrett from Public Works a little later in the agenda to speak to the current status of the work up at Strand Avenue. But if I'm not mistaken, the work at Strand Avenue began more than 3 months ago and still has not been completed. I haven't really seen any progress on that project in at least 2 or 3 weeks now. When residents at Strand Avenue came in front of the board at the beginning of July, what I said at the end was that we look forward to prompt, diligent completion of the project, and I, for one, have to express, without pointing a finger at anybody, real dissatisfaction at the failure to complete that project in any sort of a timely manner. 3 months with the road dug up just seems like too long. I know that Steve will speak in a little while about the work that we anticipate starting back up, but we certainly do look forward to having that work completed appropriately and according to spec soon. Finally, I have a proclamation that I'd like to read and I'd like to ask the board to endorse. Sherwood Lake Sr. was a law enforcement officer in Brattleboro for 30 years, from 1965 to 1995. And Mr. Lake has been on the executive committee of the American Legion and chair of that committee for 10 or 15 years now, and he's stepping down from that position. And so I want to read a proclamation and ask the board to endorse that, please. Whereas Sherwood Lake Sr. served as a law enforcement officer on the Brattleboro Police Department for 30 years, from 1965 to 1995, having achieved the rank of Detective Sergeant upon his retirement from the force. And whereas Sherwood Lake Sr. has served on the Executive Committee of Post 5 American Legion for 20 years, from 1993 to the present. And whereas Sherwood Lake Sr. has served as chair of the Post 5 American Legion Executive Committee from 96 until 2005, and from 2006 until 2013, a position from which Mr. Lake is now stepping down. And whereas Sherwood Lake Sr. was a driving force in the organization of events in Brattleboro commemorating the anniversaries of both World War II and the Korean conflict, and whereas Sherwood Lake Sr. serves on the Honor Roll Committee, which oversees care of the War Memorial at the Brattleboro Common, which lists the names of Brattleboro residents killed in the service of the United States during World War I, World War II, the Korean conflict, and the Vietnam War. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Brattleboro Select Board, on behalf of the town of Brattleboro and all of its citizens, extends its gratitude to Sherwood Lake Sr. for his extraordinary service, commitment, and selfless efforts to the people of the town of Brattleboro, to the American Legion, and to the veterans it serves. Dated at Brattleboro this 3rd day of September 2013. So I'm hoping that the board would be willing to endorse that proclamation. I could pass it around to be signed.
Absolutely.
Is there any discussion about that? I'll make that motion to endorse that proclamation. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? So that carries 5-0. Those are my comments. Thank you. Patrick.
Yes, sir. I have 2 comments, both of which relate to energy. So I will start with the first one, and this is to just speak for a little bit about the closing, or the coming closing of the plant down in Vernon. Now that a decision has been made by Entergy to close the plant in Vernon, I look forward to a time when we can move beyond the discussion of should it close or should it stay open. Obviously, that train has left the station. But for those of us that will continue to choose to live in this region, we must come to face the fact that doing so over the course of the next decade will likely be more challenging than it has been in years past. $69 million in annual wages is something which will be felt. Divided by the roughly 630 employees of Entergy, that yields an annual average wage of over $100,000. In 2012, roughly 77 households that were employed at VY resided in Brattleboro. But Brattleboro is not just a place where people live, it's a place where people conduct commerce, and recognizing that this is an economic hub, I think it's important to take into consideration the surrounding communities. And when you begin to add the workforce living in Dummerston and Guilford, Marlboro, Vernon, and such, you end up with 235 households with an average annual wage up over $100,000. That will be felt. Now, are these jobs just going to simply disappear at the end of 2014? No. There will likely be a somewhat slow decline. But as future boards at the town of Brattleboro continue to work on developing municipal budgets, particularly with an eye towards maintaining affordability, I believe that our future efforts will have just gotten a little bit harder. So something to reflect upon on the passing of a business such as VY. Obviously, this has not come completely unnoticed. And several of us who have been involved with SEVIDS, or Southeastern Vermont Economic Development Strategies, have been pondering the issue of what to do in the event of a closure. I would encourage everybody, if they have the chance, to log on to www.sevids.com and take a look at particularly what's called the post-VY report, which outlines a series of mitigation steps, and I certainly hope the folks up in Montpelier are paying close attention and will work with us to mitigate the loss of these employment numbers in the years to come. Second issue, also relating to energy, this is somewhat more positive. The town of Brattleboro was notified today by Efficiency Vermont that we have surpassed the Energy Leadership Challenge. This is a voluntary program where businesses or the town of Brattleboro who signs up seek to reduce their energy consumption by 7.5%, and we were notified today that largely as a result of the changes that were put into place at the wastewater treatment plant, that the town has surpassed its goal, saving over 222,000 kilowatt hours per year. So there is definitely hope, and thank you. That's it for me.
Next matter on the agenda is select board comments and committee reports. So anybody who's on the select board have comments to make or committee reports to give?
Do you? Yeah. Okay. Well, I had no intentions of talking about Vermont Yankee, but now that it's been brought up, I am not as jubilant about their closing. I think we have some rough roads ahead of us, and Patrick, I'm glad you addressed that a little bit. This is going to be a tough time. I know we're going to get through it, but I'm not as excited about their closing as a lot of people. So I just wanted that out there, that we have some tough times ahead, and it's going to affect our budget and a lot of other things. So, and the committee, I won't even get into that because.
Wait, want to give a report, a quick report of police fire? One of you?
You want it, Patrick?
Sure.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, if you like.
Yeah,
the Police Fire Committee is moving right along. In terms of where we're at, we are beginning negotiations with a construction management firm, which we know was DEW. We have Northeast Collaboratives on board. They're our architect firm. We have engaged DiBernardo and Associates to conduct surveys of the 3 properties in question. And I believe our next meeting will be, help me out here, on the 26th.
26th.
On the 26th at 4 o'clock.
And John did come before us at the last meeting and gave us an update on how it's going to be broken down.
Yep.
And
I'll make sure
Is that available?
I'll make sure that gets included with
Yeah.
the financial reports that come to this board
Right.
every month.
Yeah. Is this available like online or anything, or?
Not at the moment,
Okay.
but I'll make sure it gets
It might
put
be
into
nice,
the board
sure.
packet on it,
Yeah.
with the rest of the financials each month.
It just kind of breaks down how John is breaking this down and how all the accounting and everything is going to be taken care of, and where the initial money is going out. The 5 million, or that's what we're first allocating?
Yep.
Yep. So, just to make sure that it's transparent, everybody knows where the money's going. Great.
Kate?
Yeah, I want to say a few words about Vermont Yankee as well. And I would just stress to everybody that whether you know it or not, somebody knows either someone that works at Vermont Yankee or a business that does business with Vermont Yankee. So in one way or another, the closing is going to impact us. And I just think we need to remain sort of vigilant on making sure that the rest of the state doesn't forget that we need their help and assistance through this. And I know that I won't let them forget. So I hope, as a community, we can all come together in that way. Second, and I'm making this on behalf of Building a Better Brattleboro, and it's been announced and it's been out there that there's going to be a group of consultants from around the country that are going to be here for 3 days next week, the 9th, 10th, and 11th of September. And they're coming at the behest of the state of Vermont, which has received money through a disaster relief grant because of the damage that downtown Brattleboro and the town sustained 2 years ago, actually, with Tropical Storm Irene. And on Monday night at 5 p.m. at the Latches Theater, the group wants to meet with the public and get your thoughts on, your ideas and your thoughts on what you want to see downtown, what you think works, what doesn't work, what your vision is for the future, because really what they want to do is help us put an action plan together on what we can do to revitalize the downtown district and stimulate some economic growth, which I actually think in a lot of ways their visit is timely given the situation with Vermont Yankee. So I think we encourage everybody to attend because it should be a good meeting. And I have one last thing. Because
When and where?
Oh, Monday, September 9th, 5 p.m. at the Latches is the public meeting. And because we have the fire department represented here tonight, I just want to say I went to their pancake breakfast on Sunday up at the station in West Brattleboro. And I went with 2 7-year-olds and an 11-year-old, and they think you have the best chocolate chip pancakes they've ever had. So next year I would encourage everybody to go because it was great.
Anybody on this side?
Just in addition to Patrick's comment about the energy, surpassing the energy goals, another aspect that I don't think has been widely reported is the work of the Energy Committee in changing out the streetlights, which is now beginning to show up on our electric bills, our Green Mountain Power bills, and it's starting to save in the thousands, and that will continue and will increase. So I wanted to point that out and commend the Energy Committee for that good work.
And I do not have a committee report tonight, but I would like to just acknowledge and appreciate that the select board meetings are now being interpreted, and I appreciate the accessibility of that. And I'm happy for the people who previously couldn't access the content of select board meetings who now can. So thank you to those of the town who set that up. I think it's a move in the right direction.
I would just also follow up on what Dave had to say about the swapping out of the streetlights, that there also are opportunities available to have streetlights removed or turned off. So if you believe that the streetlight in your neighborhood is not necessary, don't be shy. Tell the town manager, tell the Department of Public Works, tell Green Mountain Power, because not having a street light also is a way to save money.
Mr. Chair, is there one near your house?
Not anymore. So, the next item on the agenda is public participation. This is an opportunity for anybody who's in attendance to speak to an item that's not on the agenda. Mr. Cashman?
Oh, that's not on the agenda?
Yeah.
So I should remark later if it's about something that is on the
If
agenda?
it's on the agenda, the time to speak is, well, please stay. Is there anybody else who wants to, I don't remember your name.
So, hi, thanks, David.
You're on.
It's just
That's not,
on.
that doesn't amplify.
Right.
It's just for the TV.
So I just want to draw to your attention that the paper on your table it represents an effort in town, and I'm attracting partners, but it's neither, it's opportune relative to the meeting at the Latches, but it's neither injecting itself into that discussion or looking for money or asking anything of you. But it is a human services oriented outlook on the way we talk a lot about economic development, which I have rephrased as community development. And I just wanted to bring it to your attention for further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else who's in attendance who wants to speak to anything that's not on the agenda at this point? All right, then the next item on the agenda is under liquor commissioners. So we're ready for a motion to convene as liquor commissioners.
Move we convene as liquor commissioners?
Is there any discussion from anybody on the board or anybody who's in attendance? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. So the matter under liquor commissioners is to re-examine the outside consumption permit for A&B Squared LLC doing business as Arkham. So I see the owners of Arkham here, and if you want to come up to the table and just tell us a little bit about what's been going on at Arkham since you got that outdoor permit. And if you'd introduce yourselves.
I'm Alyssa Blittersdorf. I'm one of the owners.
And I'm Alan Blackwell. I guess first off, we should start by saying thank you for the opportunity to let us have the outdoor consumption permit for the past several months, and it's really been quite wonderful, we feel, and we've gotten a really supportive outpouring from the community and patrons and not. So yeah, I think we should start by saying thank you for the opportunity this far to do this.
And how do you think it's been going?
Outstandingly.
Great.
It's been a lot of fun and a very almost fluid extension of the way we've been doing business up till this point. So where to start?
Do you want to talk about those?
Sure. One of the things we did in preparation for this meeting today, because we know you guys have very early mornings and you don't always get to see it on the other end of the time scale late at night. But one of the things we did over the last week is just go up to many of our patrons and people who live in the buildings near our bar and just members of the community, and we asked them a series of questions based on that we came up with that thought it might give a good rounded view on how this outdoor drinking area has affected them and, you know, their day to day in this community, and, you know, how they feel about our business based on that. So
We have 46 of these pieces of paper. If you guys want to look at them, you're
from the last week,
happy.
and we're happy to pass them around.
Pass them around.
There's a few that were highlighted that we feel were pretty representational.
Go
If
for
you'd
it.
like me to read some, I can read for a while.
Why don't you give us a couple?
From a gentleman who's a freelance grant writer who lives here in town. When asked, how do you feel about the outdoor patio at Arkham? He says, I feel the outdoor patio at Arkham has a tremendously positive impact on Brattleboro's night and social life. The patio creates a safe social place for interaction among patrons and Arkham, and looks inviting to folks passing by. When asked, have the Arkham employees responsibly handled outdoor consumption? And another thing, when people were given these sheets, we both very blatantly said, please be honest, good or bad. Like, we want to know. So we weren't just telling people, like, you know, be nice or don't write it or anything like that. So have the Arkham employees responsibly handled outdoor consumption? I frequent Arkham to the tune of once or twice each week, and have never been given any reason to doubt or question the Arkham staff's ability and willingness to handle outdoor consumption in a responsible manner. Next question was, has the outdoor patio affected the safety of Harmony Lot? Which was a big concern that was brought up in here last time. Has it affected the safety of Harmony Lot? Yes. The occupants of the patio each night create a public eye that wards off suspicious activity which would occur if other people were not around. Because the patio is properly enclosed, the occupants are safely removed from traffic. And this has been a really reoccurring comment that many people have had in terms of the outdoor patio is that because it creates a public arena in a fairly secluded part of our downtown, there are always public eyes that are out and looking around. People feel safer with their cars out in Harmony Lot. You know, they're aware that if there is a situation, there are members of the public who are there and able to communicate that.
Does that pertain to
Oh, yeah.
And this other one was from electrical distribution designer, and he said if it affects the safety, yes, there are more eyes watching over this often neglected area. I no longer mind parking after dark, knowing things won't go unnoticed. I didn't realize parking would come into that at all, so it was nice to know.
Is the outdoor patio a benefit to Brattleboro or not? Why? And this gentleman said, absolutely yes. Having an outdoor social space at a properly managed establishment like Arkham brings members of our community together and exemplifies a lively and populated storefront in a town where many businesses and bars have recently closed. Which, you know, was a very nice way to put it.
And this other gentleman said to that, yes, it adds to the security, to the vibe, and as a frequent patron of downtown establishments, including Brattleboro, Keene, Greenfield, and Northampton, I will often choose a place with the option of an outdoor space on those weather-appropriate days. Arkham's patio gives me one more option to keep my money local.
Another one that was really nice for us when asked if the employees have responsibly handled it. This one person says, I can say that Arkham employees are all extremely vigilant in making sure that all the rules are followed and they're polite so people listen, which is another thing we've been extremely transparent with the public about, is when they come and they recognize that we have an outdoor drinking area, and some people are just very excited by it, some people want to like be silly about it, and we just very blatantly let everyone know that this is a privilege, and you know, they are the ones who are directly responsible for whether or not we're going to be able to do this. And so by being honest about it like that with people, and you know, always having someone on duty monitoring the area, people respect that this is not something that we came to easily, and so it's our regulars and people who understand that really like help to keep everyone in check and respect it and enjoy it the way it should be, which has been great.
Guys, I got to tell you. Oh, no, go ahead.
Well, what I was going to do is I was going to ask Gene and Mike to tell us, that being the chief of police and the fire chief, to let us know whether at this time they have any concerns about the outside consumption permit continuing.
From the police department's perspective, we received no complaints about loud noise, and we've received no activities out there. We've had a couple contacts about the seating and the furniture out there, and that's been resolved to our satisfaction.
So at this point, you have no objection to the police have no objection to the outside permit continuing. And
Assistant Chief Lynch has been down here a couple of times, met with Alan, and as long as the safety regulations are met, as far as occupancy and everything, we're fine with it also.
Okay, thank you. And then I just want to hear from members of the board.
Yeah, I just got to say, I've talked to a lot of your patrons, and two of them are my sons when they're in town, and I'll tell you, they love your place. They really do.
Thanks.
They feel safe there. It's well run, and I'm not a night owl anymore, so I don't get out as much. But they just say it's a pleasure going in, and they like the outside, the fact that they can go outside, you know, when they want to. So I've heard nothing but good feedback from us.
We're open at 3 if you're ever around in the afternoon.
And I do
Usually
know
on a
that
roof.
Davey wants to say something too. We have a chance.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Oh,
All right. Anybody else on the board?
okay.
Just all I've heard is favorable things, and I think that speaks to your capacity and your respect for, you know, the town. And I think if you keep it going, you'll
Yeah.
thrive in that spot.
Thanks.
And thanks for your great attitude and going through the process with us.
Yeah.
Anybody who's in attendance who wants to speak to this matter? That's why you're here. Hi, David.
Well, it's about time.
Hi, my name is David Kedron. I am a DRB alternate and planning commission member, but I wanted to say to you guys and the public that I'm here as a private citizen tonight and not in any sort of official role, as it were. I wanted to speak tonight because I very much enjoy the establishment that they have. I believe them to be very professional. When I have friends that I bring into town who have never been here before, and I tell them about the place, they go, "Oh, well, what's up with that place?" And I say, "Oh, well, it's kind of like a classy dive bar." It has like the kind of like Cheers atmosphere of like a dive bar, but it's classy because they keep it clean.
Yes.
And they make sure that there's no riffraff that goes on there, and they are very quick to just put anyone out who even tries to start anything. As a minority in this town, my safety when I go out at night and to bar establishments is unfortunately something that I have to take into consideration. I wish it wasn't in this town, but it is. And I feel very, very safe going to their establishment. I feel like they would do anything to make sure that everyone feels like they are safe from discrimination and harassment and can enjoy themselves in their establishment. Some of the things I was going to bring up have already been brought up. So one of the current things that I will say is a challenge. I know the seating and tables were removed, and I spoke with some patrons about that, and they understood the reasoning behind it. But one of the things I will say is not having a place to temporarily set down your drink if you need to has been a problem and has been uncomfortable for a lot of people. They're forced to set their drinks down on the ground where they could get kicked and spilled over and glass could get broken. It's particularly difficult for women if they have to deal with purses that they're watching and such. So I would request that if the tables don't return, that they possibly are allowed to build some sort of, whether it's a rail that drinks can be set on temporarily or something, so that those aren't ending up being sat on the ground where they could potentially be a safety and sanitation issue. And at that time, that's all that I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks. Anybody else who wants to speak to the matter?
My name is Amy Gallant, and I'm glad to hear all this positive feedback about this, but I just want to also speak out in favor of the outside consumption permit that Arkham has. You know, if you've ever traveled anywhere, you'll see that outside consumption at restaurants is serving cities everywhere. I think the bottom line here is about the success of small businesses, and I think it's important that we make room for young people to be successful in this town. And as we've noted already, anytime there's business and commerce and staffing going on outside anywhere, the trouble seems to move on. I'm also the owner of Humble Kitchen, the food cart down on Flat Street, and you'll notice that in the far corner of Harmony parking lot, when we exited that area for the construction, you'll see that there's sleeping bags and beer bottles and trash going on over in that corner, and that wasn't happening before. And similarly on Flat Street, when we moved in, some of the trouble seemed to move further down. So I'm just speaking to the point about how business improves the situation. And serving alcohol inherently presents its own challenges, but I think it's pretty clear that Alan and Alyssa have successfully met those challenges. Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else who wants to speak to this matter? All right, well, I don't really know that there's any action that's necessary at this point. We asked for you all to come back after 3 months to see how it was going, and sounds like it's going great.
So, can I ask one other thing?
Yeah.
Before we go?
Yeah.
Here comes the favor.
So, kind of in regards to what they were saying, and I know one of the things I'd spoken to the chief about was putting up a ledge so people could set their drinks, and I'm happy to do that now that we're if this moves forward and is approved. But we were wondering if we could also maybe have just like permission to have a bench outside, so maybe, which would be clear in terms of fire safety, because we would have full wheelchair turnarounds inside, and that was one of the things I spoke to Mr. Lynch about. But
kind of wanted to bring it up because I know it's allowed in every other city, and we've kind of proven ourselves for the past 3 months that it can be handled properly. We have a doorman there whenever people are out there. We just kind of wanted to see if that's an option going forward.
I'm going to jump right in and say that I think that is a fire safety and a zoning issue more than anything else, and that it's not something that we would really be addressing in the first instance here. I have no way of knowing whether it's on your property or whether it would comply with fire regulations. And so
I could answer a few of those questions if you want me to.
Well, is it
we can bring it
inside-
back here.
Is it inside the?
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
inside that area.
Which is our property, which is one of the
You
things
know,
we talked to Mr. Lynch
And
about.
I'm just thinking that it sounds so simple and so innocuous at this point that, you know, I got a feeling it may be just an ongoing process of what is going to work and what isn't going to work as far as the chief goes, and both chiefs actually. I'm totally inclined to say, you know, and this is just me, okay, to try it, and if these guys come along and say, well, that's really not working, you know, I think you guys have gone beyond, you know, above and beyond what we've asked you to do. So my inclination, and again, I'm only one of 5, is to say, you know, go ahead and try something, you know, as long as we're, you know, within the realm of being legal. But again, I'm just one.
Yeah.
So is that something we should work with them on, but it's okay
Yes.
from
Well,
your perspective?
I think so.
Okay.
I want to make sure that we're dealing with process appropriately.
Sure.
The permit that you have, I expect, only relates to your property, not to town property.
Which we're not a
And
part
so,
of.
Right.
I understand.
Right.
And if there's going to be a change in the use of the property, it's not really something that comes to us at the select board in the first instance. It's something you have to deal with zoning administrator and police and fire, and then if it comes up back to us, we can speak to it, but I don't think that it's really for us to.
How would it come back to you?
I'm not really sure
It
that
really
it would.
wouldn't.
It might not.
It wouldn't.
So we should speak with the other officials and then
Zoning,
move forward
police,
with
and
it?
fire.
Work through the
That's right.
departments, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Great job.
I guess David's got his hand up again, but we're pretty much finished with the topic, so.
I know. I just wanted to say very quickly that I encourage the police department and the fire department and the zoning administrators to get in touch with the city of Burlington and how they handle their outdoor consumption permits. I know they have at least 6
I was just up
establishments
there. It's
on Church
great.
Street, and they seem to have no problem with outdoor seating and tables and the types of barriers that they have. Most of them just have a simple chain or a velvet rope, and that's it.
But David, just
So-
to be a little, you know,
Well,
just
I'm trying to
make-
class
I
up the
know,
place.
I know, but just to be a little clear, that's a completely different area. I mean, that's
Yeah,
a closed-off church, and it's wonderful up there. I totally agree, but it's a little bit different.
But there
Yes.
are in
Yes.
in terms of a private establishment opening up a place out onto the public way. That is the leading example that we have in the state of Vermont, and I'm sure that there's some things that could be learned from how the city of Burlington does it.
But there is no traffic on Church Street.
Well, but I'm talking
Vehicle-
about
vehicular traffic.
within
Right.
the.
All right, I don't want to. I don't want to have the back and forth at this point.
Yep.
It's a point that's taken, and we'll ask the two of you to coordinate with zoning administrator, police chief, and fire chief to see whether that's something you can do or not.
Okay. And if I could say one other thing, because I have crazy good hearing, so I'm sorry. So I overheard what you guys were just talking about a little bit. And we would never have any alcohol on public land in any way, or...
Right, and that's my concern.
Yeah, absolutely. So, sorry.
Would you
All
guys
right,
like
well,
these?
thank you for coming.
Yeah, would you like
If-
to see
If
them?
you want
If
us
you
to
want
have them,
I mean, it's
We did it for you.
if you want us to have them, you can put them on the Grateful Wall out, in the lot, or you can leave.
maybe
them
we
here.
can just
You pick
gather
them up
more
after.
and give you like a bigger stack next time we come up and see it.
You can bring them to us, and we can look at them. You can give them to Jan, or else you can take them with you, whatever your pleasure is.
And all the other papers that you get too, and just see how big the pile gets.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, so we're ready for a motion to adjourn as liquor commissioners.
So moved.
We have a motion to adjourn as liquor commissioners. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Next matter on the agenda is to convene as water and sewer commissioners. Do we have a motion to convene as water and sewer commissioners?
So moved.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of convening as water and sewer commissioners, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. John, if you could please explain the water and sewer abatements.
Okay, well, we have 4 properties. They're all mobile homes that were damaged in Tropical Storm Irene, and they were damaged to the extent that the mobile homes had to be removed from the property. And so they have all now been removed. We have capped the water connection, so there will never be another mobile home on that site. And these properties did have some outstanding water and sewer bills at the time that they were damaged, and we're asking the board to approve the abatement of those relatively small amounts.
Anybody on the board have any questions?
It's good. It's a good thing. It's a very good
They've had
thing.
enough water.
It's, yeah.
And is there any comments from anybody who's in attendance? Does anybody want to speak to this matter? Well, then I guess we're ready for a motion.
I move that we abate the water and sewer balances from 28 Brookwood for $585.70,
That's right.
$585.79, 36 Brookwood for $138.40, 46 Village Drive for $221.31, and 10 Winding Hill Road for $355.13, for a total of $1,301.63.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. I guess we're ready for a motion to adjourn as water and sewer commissioners.
So moved.
We have a motion to adjourn as water and sewer commissioners. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. The next matter on the agenda is under new business. We're having 2 departmental reports tonight. First, planning services, and then the library. Looks like Rod's first up.
I am gonna.
Is that your high-tech presentation?
It's going to be, yeah, hopefully.
I'm gonna fall asleep.
But before
Good
we
luck to
get
you.
I have a few handouts.
Rod, am I gonna fall asleep?
No, because I have a thing that will take.
Snap. Gift bags.
Okay.
Wow,
so-
gift bags.
There you go. So what I'm handing out here is the town plan on a USB drive. And so you may recall when we went through the town plan adoption process that we spoke about the production and also spoke about the need to improve the quality of the project. So this is the printed version, which is identical to what you get on the USB drive. And so we've had a limited print run of these, about 50, and key commissioners and board members get a hard copy. Most people will be getting it as a USB drive. And so that should facilitate the use of the plan as a as a document on people's computers and readily accessed. The library, we also have this now available as a PDF from our website. The library has a hard copy and electronic copies as well. It should also facilitate subsequent updates. So let me just get this going here. So you should recognize this. It was black and white in your packets, and then there's an additional one-page handout, again, just for tonight, to help guide you through some other aspects of the presentation. All right.
Well, this beats the fire departments, I'll tell you, so far.
That was generally my goal, so I could probably just go now. Okay, so you'll see here that what I've done is tried to break out the roles of the Planning Services Department into 3 key categories. The first is planning, the second is land development, and the third is information systems. Information systems may need a little bit of explanation. By that, we're referring to the land records, the paper archive that we maintain, and that dovetails with the records also contained in the town clerk's office. And then internet-mounted data that's for the most part available via the Maps Online portal, which our staff are involved in a fairly heavy way. And then ultimately, one-off mapping processes that we use, either Maps Online for or other proprietary software, usually ArcGIS. So what I'm trying to do here is to actually break out who we connect with to do our work, the process that we use to do our work, and then the final product that might come out of it. So taking each one of those divisions within a very small department, the planning department, we engage, in the broader sense, we engage with the public as required under state statute. We engage through boards and commissions that we support as staff. We are members of committees, both standing committees within the town, such as the Small Business Assistance Program or Traffic Safety, and we engage through regional planning bodies such as the Wyndham Regional Commission, professional connections with Vermont state agencies and formal review processes that they conduct. Other stakeholders, including property owners and residents, and then finally professional networks, including the Professional Planners Association and other similar bodies. What we do is we develop plans, such as the one we just gave you a copy of. Then we implement those plans to achieve what under statute it refers to as orderly development. We draft regulations. We provide professional support to other parts of the town organization. We write grants to support the operation of the town broadly and services, the operations of the Planning Services Department directly. And then we manage projects, either that we've written grants for or that have been written somewhere else in the town. The product that we come up with at the end of that process includes participation as itself as a key product, plans, projects, and land use regulations that guides the development in the town. For land development, this is the area that's predominantly the purview of the zoning administrator. The zoning administrator acts as the clerk of the DRB. We engage with property owners and interested persons. It's an important point to remember that when we talk about development, land development, that the obvious thing that we see is the application from a property owner, and what we tend to not see so readily are the neighbours and the public that are impacted by any proposed development. And there's a clear set of rights and processes that attach to the development review process, so that we protect the interests of neighbours and abutters, those that are present and those into the future. the way to think about that is that many of the projects that have taken place in the past still have significant impacts on the way we live our lives and the way we move around town. And the planning process is intended, the review process is intended to take that into account. The way we actually undertake this is that we do application review. There's a sort of what we would refer to as a Chinese wall in our department. So the zoning administrator has the responsibility of assuring that the applications are complete when they're submitted. And then planning staff, either the planner or myself, actually review the applications and develop staff reports for DRB members. DRB members use that report to guide their own deliberations on the application. That's a formal decision-making process that they're supported in by the town, by the zoning administrator, potentially the town attorney, and our office. Then we conduct those hearings on a basis of on-the-record review, which means that they're held to a evidentiary standard similar to a regular court hearing, and that the scope of an appeal is framed by that process and is more limited than a typical de novo process. The product equals decisions that are defendable, stand up to scrutiny, and allow us to keep effective records. And then the last part is an important part of our work, which is that we maintain records and maintain a review process that's consistent with the National Flood Insurance Program, which is the subsidized flood insurance for property owners within the special flood hazard area potentially impacted by flooding. Information systems is the part of our department that's probably growing the fastest in terms of hours devoted to it and the kind of attention to detail. We engage with the public, various land development professionals, and other town staff. The process is that we maintain both paper and electronic land records wherever possible. We maintain information sources by topic and jurisdiction, including Act 250 permit applications and decisions, etc. We use the obvious, unique identifier for town activity, which is that most of the time we're talking about a geographically unique location, so we use a tax map parcel number or something. Usually we use the tax map parcel number to identify our files and the action that's happening. We maintain GIS data. We make our own maps, make maps for other uses, and we support other town staff in the use of the same information and technology to smooth the work process and improve their efficiency. There's 4 full-time equivalent staff. Comes out net after an average take on our sick leave, holidays, and other factors to about 6,000 hours a year. About 50% of it is devoted to planning, 40% is to the zoning administrative functions of land development, and about 10% is devoted to information systems. Most of that's for people or services outside the department. So this is the same information expressed in a slightly different way, using kind of an average week. It totals about 120 hours for the 4 of us over a week.
What is the grade?
The grade is information systems.
Yeah, but how did you describe that?
How did I
I
describe
mean, what does it consist of? Explain it again.
That's the maintenance of the web page, the maintenance of maps online, the custom form making that goes behind maps online so that people can make queries. Most of it is associated with internal town functions, using maps online as basically as a platform for doing town work.
Thank you.
But could you, I just want to, along the same lines, just want to clarify, because I didn't understand what this sentence meant. Information systems are an increasing proportion of time with townwide efficiencies. Could you just kind of
Right.
expand that a little
So
bit?
I've been here since 2008. When I got here, we didn't really have maps online, and then when we initially got maps online, we used it in a very limited way in each one of the departments that had somebody that was interested in pursuing it or was working with it was tending to do it in a pretty isolated fashion. There's a GIS committee made up of staff. It's a very active committee and that problem solves and then finds ways of taking one category of information and utilizing it in many different ways. So crucially, the staff of that committee include dispatch, the fire department, our department, the lister's office, and public works. And so we can use the same kind of information in basically geographically specific information in different ways to achieve different work products, and our accuracy has improved and our response time or efficiency has improved.
So it's all on the same platform in all the agencies, all the departments?
A lot of it's on the same platform, and it's a work in progress.
Well, I think all the departments have changed because of
Yeah.
the increase of computers and, and the software, and I just think it's a shift of...
Yeah. Well, when you mention efficiencies, the
Right.
first thing that comes to mind is that everybody's using the same program or on the same platform, so they've got access.
We use a thing called P-Performance, which allows us to take data out of various data sets and utilize it in a specific way. So.
Right, and in contrast to our discussion about the telephone system earlier today, we had that presentation earlier, probably 2.5 months ago now, about that Maps Online, and it really appears to be very useful.
Yeah.
So just that gray shaded area that currently is about 12 hours a week is the area that both that is growing in terms of the balance of work that's done in our department in a week. So this is permit activity between 2008 and 2012. What you'll notice is, first of all, I should say that 2008 was kind of a bad year, and it's pretty much the same. We were doing a little more in 2007. I would say that we weren't that impacted by the recession. We weren't high before and we weren't that low after. The type of the permits has changed somewhat. We have a handful of large commercial or institutional projects, and we have very many small projects, and not a lot in between. And possibly more concern is the very low level of subdivision activity, which has been like that, as far as I can tell, for upwards of 40 years.
Why is that, do you think?
The one really unique attribute that Brattleboro has is that it's had almost exactly the same population for 100 years, and no one can really figure out exactly what that's due to. I would say, trying to look at it from a glass half full standpoint, it hasn't shrunken, and there's plenty of communities that have confronted shrinking population. So, on the other hand, it hasn't grown either. So
the permitting thing is a little daunting because has it gotten more complicated in the state of Vermont?
Our standard, one or two family home permit application process is no different than it was 20 years, 30 years ago. The larger scale commercial stuff, if it's an Act 250 permit, maybe, but not, I wouldn't say hugely. And I'd say there's enough information to facilitate a quick process, usually. This is our work plan for the coming year. You'll see that the dominant thing for us is rewriting the zoning ordinance. And so I want to emphasize this is a provisional schedule for a couple of different reasons that I'll get into. We have been allocated $30,000 in this financial year to assist with the zoning ordinance rewrite. It was understood at the outset that that wasn't going to be the total cost, and that we should look to leverage that amount wherever possible. The first and most obvious way of leveraging that is applying for what is called a municipal planning grant. That's the blue line there, the MPG. The closing date for that is September 30th. And then the decision about whether we are successful or not is usually late November, early December. So we don't want to go out for an RFP until we find out whether we've been successful for a municipal planning grant. If we are successful for the maximum amount, which is what we expect to ask for, we'll need to actually make a match of $6,000. So we would propose to take $6,000 from that $30,000, and basically we will be looking at $50,000 for the financial year of 2014 to devote to the zoning ordinance rewrite.
So, Rod, when the zoning ordinance gets rewritten, do you actually contract with someone to come in and
Yes.
do that for us?
Yeah, let me get on to
Okay,
the next
great.
slide.
Great,
So
thanks.
the idea here would be, at the bare minimum, to break it out as two projects requiring two different teams of consultants. And so again, the process at the top there is the RFP, which will go out after the municipal planning grant decision is made. And that part of the project will look at environmental standards in particular. And so there are some issues coming up in the current rewrite of the subdivision regulations that will influence the work of this consulting firm or consultant. And then there will be other aspects of environmental standards that are also important. So in the town plan, we have been asked to consider the adoption of fluvial erosion hazard standards again. There was an interim ordinance in place that went down in 2010. Yeah. John remembers that.
I was, yeah.
Yeah. And so the idea would be to revisit that topic. The complexity of that and the technical nature of that are such that we expect that would be a different consultant from the consultant that we would depend on to do the majority of the document and the majority of the process. What this attempts to show using symbols is the complexity of the public input process and the drafting process. You'll see in the bottom corner there, the bottom right-hand corner, we've got a provisional date of October 2014 for a draft zoning ordinance. That's probably a little ambitious, but is what we're aiming for. If you go back to this timeline, the question comes up as to how we would actually fund it from July through to December. The municipal planning grant can run up to 18 months, but we would expect that the kind of funding that we would apply to this process wouldn't actually last that length of time. So the question for us comes as to what kind of budgetary commitments we could be making in July or by July that would allow us to finish this project. And so it's difficult to be more concrete right now because we need to know what's going to happen with the municipal planning grant. So there's a couple of moving parts here that make us somewhat reluctant to promise exactly how this is going to play out.
And you're not going to know that until no.
We won't know the outcome of the municipal planning grant until late November, early December. The idea would be that planning staff, Sue Feeling, the planner, and myself would work on this almost full-time in conjunction with the consultants. So we're looking at a major commitment, but it would happen along with everything else that always happens in the department anyway.
Do you have some sense at this point, or would you rather not say what you think the total cost for consultants to do the fluvial hazard erosion and the zoning ordinance rewrite, the total cost is likely to be?
I can give you I can give you one example of a town to the north that got a nice one for $200,000.
A town that's been a stable population with the glass half full for 40 years or 100 years, 12,000 people?
No, they had more people to get away with it. And so that was South Burlington. South Burlington budgeted $200,000 for the same project.
Holy moly.
Yes, that's
which we
not
clearly,
comparable.
which we clearly don't think is comparable. The advice that we've taken from a range of planning consultants is that it would be extremely difficult, that it's impractical to think of it happening with 50. It's somewhere between 75 and 100 is more realistic. 75,000 to 100,000.
So, Rob, what happens if you glass half empty if you don't get the grant?
It's sort of back to the drawing board.
It is.
you know, in terms of how we're going to do it yet. Yeah.
But you feel pretty confident that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, Sue and I got a pretty good track record.
Good.
We're one, they're none. So,
There you go.
you know, we've always done it. So it would be between us, I think, a 20th application. And
It'd be a very competitive application.
Yeah.
we think it's a good fit with the criteria that they're using this year, and we think that it, you know, we think we can make a good grant application. So, so the question that we need to ponder is what, you know, what Plan B is. It's a little bit difficult to put that together from here, but
we'll be in a better situation to think about the next fiscal year right around the time that the budget's being developed.
Exactly.
Is that fair to say?
Right around the end of November.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, the two things will coincide. I mean, we'll have more information when you're looking for more information.
Good.
Rob, the grant, is that from the state or from the regional planning?
The municipal planning grant comes from the state.
Right.
Small.
So that might be something, Kate, that you would want to
It's a small
add to your
program.
list of things to get on Montpelier.
Yeah. Yeah. The maximum you can get is $20,000. To do that, you'd have to offer a match of 6. So you're looking at a project of 26. You know, that's not very much money to do, you know, this kind of work. It's clearly not enough.
So what are you saying?
We're going to keep our old zoning.
Yeah.
People might end up being a lot fonder of it than they are now,
Yeah.
given the alternatives.
Right.
There you go. How's that? We are not that fond of it. Okay. So, any other questions?
That's the last page.
So it's kind of hard to think about until we know what's happening in November.
Yep. Yep. As part of this process, people had asked, you know, I know we've just been talking about money. So on the back of that sheet, there's also discussion of the budget. And so just want to draw that to your attention.
Fair to say that virtually all or a very large part of what the department does is statutorily mandated.
Yes, and if it's not statutorily mandated, it's either a kind of a backroom process increasingly for the efficient operation of the rest of the town, or it's facilitating what the statute likes to call orderly development by talking to stakeholders.
Right.
And, you know, making the most of opportunities as they arise, or challenges, of which they're usually equal measure.
Trying to raise grant money.
That, I would say, well, that past 3 weeks, it's trying to raise grant money, trying to find new locations for large providers of affordable housing in town that's out of the floodway, looking at the potential impact of large land sales on the gateway to Brattleboro. I mean, there's a range of things that happen in a week or a couple of weeks that's pretty complex. Yeah.
Are there any other questions from anybody on the board? Anybody in his attendance want to ask any questions? Thank you, Rod.
Okay, great.
That was very
Thanks,
helpful.
Very good.
And so now we have another department report from the library. So is, Jerry, are you also going to be using the computer?
We're going to use it a little bit.
Wow.
Not as fancy as,
And Jeannie, you're also using the computer? Hey, there's coordination right there, you know?
That's right. There's Rod's PowerPoint.
pressure's on.
Well, we'll wow him with some internet.
It's a hard act to follow.
Particularly with my own kids.
So I brought Gene Walsh, who's a reference librarian at the library, to sort of manage the computer, and we'll get to that later, just to give you a little virtual tour of the electronic resources.
Don't mind me at the beginning, I'm just going to set up
Yeah, she's
some
gonna
links
just set
while
up stuff,
Jerry's
but-
doing
But you have the memo from me, is that right?
Yeah, thanks.
So we can go over that a little bit, and just give you a little first an overview, and then you can ask questions. So basically, the library history. The town has supported library services in a public way since 1882, when it became a public library. We actually had a private library in Brattleboro beginning in 1842. It was a subscription library where many of them were in those days. But 1882, the town voted monies to support a public library. And in 1886, George Brooks, who was lived actually in West Chesterfield, New Hampshire, built the building that is no longer here. It was where the post office parking lot is now. That building was taken by eminent domain by the federal government in 1967 and was knocked down to the grief of many people in the community.
Nice of them.
And, but we did get a new building, which was erected in '67, the current Brooks building. So it is going on, 46?
40, almost 50.
Yeah, almost 50. And the basic footprint of the building hasn't changed in all that time. There've been some interior renovations. There used to be a Windham County Law Library on the top floor, but when the Bar Association sort of gave up on it, a lot of the books disappeared. The town was able to purchase that back from them. We had to put money into the building, and we turned it into an office space for staff work. But basically, 17,600 square feet. If you're familiar with it, the main floor has the main library collections of materials, and then we have a mezzanine with our nonfiction and our local history and genealogy room, and the second floor has the children's library plus the meeting room space and a fine art storage area. Even though the footprint hasn't changed, the way the space used has changed quite a bit. John mentioned how information technology has transformed town departments, and ours has been transformed incredibly in the last 30 years. And where we had many reading tables, now we have public access workstations. People sitting at the reading tables are there with their portable devices, their iPads, iPods, their laptops, tied into our wireless system. So our staffing, we have 6 full-time staff, 8 part-time staff, a couple of on-call people. We have also 35 volunteers that put in nearly 3,000 hours per year working in all sorts of aspects of the library. The departments are the adult and young adult, children, and then within those departments we have circulation, reference, online interlibrary loans, the technical services, which we call our cataloging and acquisitions, and repair. Books need to be repaired if they're going in and out of the library. As I mentioned, we have public access computing, and then we have a very vibrant lifelong learning program with lectures and workshops and early literacy initiatives in our children's center. We have, since 1990, we've had 5 strategic plans, and we use a model developed by the Public Library Association for those. And we just completed the 5th one, which is 2012-2016. The subtitle is Making Connections in Person and Online. And for that plan, we hosted 2 public focus group discussions where we had 50 people at both sessions helping us with ideas about kind of the direction we'd like to see the library go in the next 5 years. And we did a survey with over 400 respondents that we worked into our what we call our service priorities. So our service priorities for the next 5 years are support young readers from early literacy on, satisfy the curiosity of library users through lifelong learning, connect to the online world to help library users find, evaluate, and use information, stimulate the imagination of library users to resources for reading, viewing, and listening, and provide access to welcoming physical and virtual spaces for library users. And among those six priorities, we have developed objectives and tasks that everybody can expect, the staff, the trustees, volunteers, and public charge our work programs. So in the next couple of years, we're going to do the things we've been doing. We're going to develop programs to support early literacy and library activities. Library. We have a teen advisory board that we just started. We're going to develop that because we need to get teens more involved in sort of the planning and input for our services and collections. We've gotten some new video conferencing equipment through the Google grant to the Vermont Department of Libraries. We're going to be promoting that and training people on it, so anybody can come and use it in the library for programs. I hope the town departments will take advantage of it because there's a very good potential there for interacting with other departments and saving on gas mileage, because you can do that, locally. The other thing we're planning to do is work on our spaces in the library. Try to reconfigure some spaces we need through the surveys and through interactions staff have had with people. We need a space for a small meeting room and a study space, as well as for some small spaces for this video conferencing equipment. So we'll be working on that as well. So some of the, I'm sorry?
Those spaces would be for the public.
Yes, for the public. Just to give you an idea of the size of the library, we have about 73,000 book volumes, 6,000 non-print, which is DVD, CD, and tape. Our circulation is almost 180,000 transactions a year. The digital media downloads have become important. There's been triple-digit increases in that. There's still a minor portion of what we circulate, but last year we had over 4,000 of those transactions, and that will probably continue to grow. That would be e-books, e-audio. People can download to their devices. Our borrowers, so we have 10,000 borrowers. Our physical visits in and out of the library, 153,000 people come in and out every year. Website visits were 47,000. We have 39,000 public access sessions last year. People coming in using our 18 public access computers. Online database searches, 23,000. And the program attendance for our lifelong learning programs was 10,000. And those figures might not mean much, except that I can put them in the context of what other libraries do in the state. We submit an annual report to the Vermont Department of Libraries that actually makes it to the federal level, and then you can look at and see what other libraries do. So for there are 8 public libraries that serve populations over 12,000. Areas where we rank first in are interlibrary loan circulation, borrowing materials from other libraries. Registered borrowers, we have 62% of the population. This non-resident fee income, what we charge non-residents to use our library is first in the state, with about almost $20,000 comes to town. We rank second in a couple of things. Staff that hold professional library degrees. We actually have 6 people on our staff now with professional library degrees, myself, Gene, and 2 supervisors. But we also have 2 other people who have gotten their degrees while working at the library. We also rank second in per capita visits. And some of the lower amounts in terms of this comparison with other libraries our size. Staff expenditures, we rank 4th. We rank 4th in FTE equivalents, and we rank 6th in the number of hours that were open each week. We're open now 50 hours a week. When I came to work here in 1978, we were open 66 hours a week. So that's gone down by almost a third. And that's been through various budget reductions and that type of thing. Some of the challenges that we're going to be facing in the next couple of years is one of our major efforts this last year has been to join the Catamount Library Network. This is a consortium of will soon be 10 libraries that will share its holdings and will loan holdings amongst us. It is hoped that it will grow even more, but that's where libraries can really have the biggest bang for its buck is sharing the collections. Our 73,000 volumes now is actually about 123,000, and it will grow probably to 250,000 to 500,000 by the end of 2014 with new libraries coming online. That's a challenge, just managing that, and Gene will probably talk about that a little bit. It's especially as we get new libraries online, just making sure that everything works correctly with the software. We're using an open source software called Koha, which is actually less money to maintain than our proprietary software that we used to have, and that's reflected in this year's budget. But there'll be costs in other ways in terms of moving material back and forth. We're still using U.S. mail. That may change later if the state can create a courier system for materials. The digital content I mentioned, that's going to be even more use. We're going to be connected to the fiber this month, the fiber connector that the town has. That will certainly help with the digital speeds. And of course, we have this video conferencing equipment that will be used more effectively with that. I mentioned our space use and reconfiguration. We may be configuring some space in the local history and genealogy room. Many of the genealogical resources that we own are now online through Ancestry.com and other resources, so we may be looking at shrinking that collection in there and reclaiming the space. The trustees next year are planning to do an annual appeal because we really need a consistent steady stream of revenue that can help support these services that people have come to enjoy. And Gene was going to just kind of give you a little quick virtual tour. Do you have any questions at this point for me?
The only question I have is, I think out of any department, and I could be wrong, that you're going to change more quickly with the media, with the digital age than I think any department. Does that scare you? Does it? But you know what I mean. I mean, it's changing rapidly. I always think about the library as, God, is that someday going to be a lost art? And I hope not, because I love books.
Yeah. It's really interesting. The Pew Center for Internet Society comes out with reports almost weekly, and they had one last month about the use of libraries by young people under age of 30. And even though young people are so digitally engaged with their smartphones and everything and texting, they still like to hold the printed book.
Yeah, I know.
And that's what's kind of interesting. And about a year ago, if you asked me that, when the rate of increase of digital purchases from Amazon was out of the roof. It really was. This year, it's gone up only by double digits.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we've reached like a saturation point in some way, in terms of book reading habits among people. I mean, there's still going to be a shift in that direction just because of the economics. But we just have to be ready for it and be able to handle all these formats.
I just think people really still like to go to a library.
Yeah, I mean, it is a place to gather, and it's
150,000 came to the library.
That's right. Exactly.
For a little town,
because it's a busy place. You should have seen it today. I mean, it was everything from people using computers to people doing research.
That's great.
Whatever, but you're right. It's a major shift for us. And all this technology is disruptive. It disrupts the things that we're used to doing.
Yes.
And then you have to adjust and adapt.
Yes. I mean, out of any department, I think you guys have to morph yourself quicker than anybody.
So we're running to do that. Well, maybe Gene could just give you a real, we put a lot of effort into our website and making our digital resources more accessible to people, so Gene will show you a few things.
Yeah, I've been instructed to use this.
Okay.
And I'll be brief, I promise, but I'll just show you a couple of cool things. Yeah, I agree. It seems like now we just, new formats, everybody wants all the formats, you know, like there's just, we need to have the electronic, we need to have books, we need to have audio, we need to have the whole thing. So I'm representing reference and information services at Brooks, and just the basic point I wanted to make is that often you need a whole book, but sometimes you're just looking for information. You need an article, you need some statistics. You're writing a business plan, say, and you need a little industry overview, or you are buying a washing machine. Like everybody's done a reference request if you've consulted Consumer Reports because you want an objective review. You don't want to just rely on what you can find trolling the internet. Or you want to develop a new skill, you want to learn how to use Excel or learn a language or fix your car. So all of that is part of information resources at the library, and we've always provided reference information and tools for self-education and staff to help people access those resources. And these days, virtually all of the reference budget goes toward electronic resources because it's just such an obvious way to provide that kind of information. It's right up to date, it can be convenient. And library card holders, meaning folks who are residents of Brattleboro or have a business in Brattleboro are entitled to a free library card. Folks from out of town can purchase a card, and with that card, you can generally access all these materials on our website remotely with your mobile device or with your computer. So the first one, I just thought I'd give you a quick peek at a few of them. And I skipped to the former. I should have just shown you. Here's our website. Under Search and Learn, there's a database list. Database is A to Z. And I recommend when you've got some extra time and you're done with Facebook for the day, check out the library databases and just see what we've got. One of the things that you might not know we have is the Brattleboro Reformer Archive back to 2003, and it's searchable. So earlier
and it's free with your library card.
And it's free with your library card. And so I searched for Rod to see what Rod has been up to lately, and reporting in the Brattleboro Reformer, and got recent articles where Rod is mentioned talking about planning or whatever. And those, if I click, it will bring up the whole article. So that's available to all of you. Small Business Resource Center is a really cool resource, and I want to mention part of this is there are several ways where we group together with other libraries. There's several library consortia, and one of them is called the Vermont Online Library, and that gives us a whole lot of the databases that are on our website, and that is partially subsidized by the Vermont Department of Libraries, so it helps it make it affordable for us. And there are a couple other consortia. One is called the Green Mountain Library Consortium, and then we get another database called Mango for language learning through them. So again, we get a good price. And Jerry mentioned the Catamount Library Network that we're now a part of for getting materials. One of the things that we also get through that is there's a cool tool called Novel that's great for readers to help you find the next great book. And that is now folded into our catalog. It's part of that, and so we get it through the consortium, so it's a lot cheaper. Anyway, Small Business Resource Center, again, is part of the Vermont Online Library. I'm just going to show you something you could do, like I'm pretending that I want to open a music store. So I click on business types. I click on music stores, and I will find several sample business plans for music stores. So here's one, for the fictional group called Rudy's Records. It was this business plan was published in 2011. Gives you an executive summary, market analysis, and industry analysis. And these are real considerations for somebody who's trying to figure out how to craft a business plan. The kind of things they need to be looking for and how they want to write their plan. And then up at the top, there's also let's emergency directories. So somebody who's like in that business and wants to find out what kinds of resources are available to them. Here are associations that, you know, of trade associations for compact disc and record stores, and you know, how to get in touch with them. And back here, there were trade journals listed and so on. So that's kind of a nice resource. The next one is the Testing and Education Resource Center. I wanted to point out it's tests of all kinds. So you know, like a lot of the young people who are needing to do their SATs or whatever are using this, and it's also great for. There are career tools. So I was earlier. Let's see, which one did I do? I think I looked up like real estate. If you wanted to, I'm sorry, we'll just search for it. So I get this question sometimes at the reference desk. Somebody needs to do a real estate exam, or they're kind of trying to figure out if it's a field that interests them. And so I can open the full text of the whole Master the Real Estate License Exam book here, and I can read it and use it to prepare for my exam. And then I can also go back and sorry, I'm doing this one-handed, so I can't. Thank you, Jay. Oh, good. See, I knew I brought you here for some reason.
Yeah, nice job.
Oh, that was a
practice
slam.
test. That's what I was looking for. You can do 6-time full-length practice tests. So that's what this database does. Is you can get your prep tools, and then you can get do your practice tests. And that has been like when people hear about that, they get really happy. So.
I wish I had that when I failed my first exam 30 years ago.
Universal Class is and actually you can take online courses. You have an instructor. You have 6 months to complete the course. You do it at your own pace and in your own time, but you actually are working with an instructor. So over here are like all the different categories of kinds of classes that you can take. And I'm going to click on career training and give you a sense of some of the variety of courses. I love it. Kinesics 101, Learn to Read Body Language. They're featuring that one. But here are, you can kind of see ABCs of technical writing, administrative assistant fundamentals, assertiveness training, business ethics. That's hard to say, but you can study it. Criminology basics. Diversity Training 101, whole lots of stuff, and they're all free with your library card.
And they do give you continuing education units too.
Yeah, that's right. You can get continuing education credit in some circumstances. I keep forgetting actually to recommend this to people for computer training, because there's a lot of things where if you just want to learn a specific program or whatever, this is really handy for that. The Gale Virtual Reference Library I included because just to point out that when I buy reference books nowadays, I tend to buy them in electronic form so people can search them from home. And I think, for that kind of thing, if somebody's writing a report or whatever late at night, you can just log on to the library, you can search some reference books. And so I'm going to do, this is called the Gale Virtual Reference Library. I did this search earlier on the Abenaki. And you can get a sense of the variety of articles, UXL Encyclopedia of Native American Tribes, Dictionary of American History, an article on Lake Champlain, and so on. Eastern Woodlands Indians from the Gale Encyclopedia of U.S. Economic History, so specific economic view of that topic. Consumer reports. Here it is. Just wanted to let everybody know that you can, shop for a clothes dryer. You can, go in and get the full website, all of their reviews with the cute little, graphs with the different colored dots to tell you if it was a good one or a bad one. All of that is available. And Mango is the other one that I mentioned earlier. I like to show this one just because it's kind of dramatic. It's an interesting one. So these are all the languages that are available. I don't know whether this computer's got all the capability or not.
Don't they have pirate?
They have Pirate, which
They have
is...
pirate as a language.
They do. It's actually it's pretty funny because the way that this thing is designed is they teach it everything like in the context of the culture. And so if you're like learning Swedish or whatever, they tell you about in Sweden this is the etiquette, and they have this whole thing with pirate etiquette. I think about like if you are it's a joke one, but it's they actually did quite a nice job. You would launch it, and then it's interactive, and so if you have a speaker on your computer, you can record your own voice compared to a native speaker and practice your language pronunciation and that kind of stuff. I think it's going to take too long to learn, so I'm not going to subject you to that, but check it out sometime. It's on the website.
So things like this are what I'm a little bit concerned about, because you can do all this without ever entering the library.
But you do need a library card.
But you do need it. I know.
I just because I end up talking about this a lot at the reference desk with people, and in our plan it says creating welcoming physical and virtual spaces, and we're still engaging people with information, and we're still helping people develop their reading skills, their thinking skills, their critical skills, and so that's all there. It just happens to be in a virtual environment. And again, what we're finding, because it came up when we were just talking about like the building stuff, is that it was really interesting in the last long-range planning process that we found that people were saying, we want more electronic, and then people at the same time are saying, we want a place to meet, we want more meeting spaces, we want more, and so it's like people want that social experience at the same time they want the virtual. So I think that is a very positive development, personally.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I'm always like saying is that the libraries, like the tradition of the library is always like we spend our resources to buy stuff that people then share around. So it's a good value for everybody, and that's the same here. It's just electronically. We're buying stuff you couldn't afford to buy, on your own out on the internet, and if we can make it available to the users of the library, then everybody benefits. It's much good.
Thank you.
Great job.
Does anybody have any more questions? Anybody on the board or anybody who's in attendance? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jerry. Thanks, guys.
So the next items on the agenda are public works related, so maybe Steve wants to come and take the table. And Hannah.
Is he going to use the computer?
No, we should be done.
So the next item on the agenda is awarding the bid for the William Street Road paving project. So Steve or Hannah, please tell us about that.
Okay, good evening, Steve Barrett, Public Works, and Hannah Connell's also here with me, and we're going to go over a couple projects. They're FEMA related. These are, the first one is William Street. There was a significant amount of damage done during Tropical Storm Irene to this road. In fact, we've already received payment for over $150,000 worth of damages. Most of the repairs that were done before were also done in a way that they were considered permanent, with the exception of the roadway and the sidewalk that runs from Elliott Street to Brandon Street. So we put out bids for the sidewalk, as the board's aware, several weeks ago. In fact, that project's completed, and this is for the paving portion of that project, to do the final paving. And we only received one bid from Lane Construction for the work at a sum of $57,770. I am recommending that we accept this bid for the paving, and also I want the board to be aware that the original estimate was approximately $219,239, and so it's $31,235 below what our estimate was for the total project. So there was some savings on the sidewalk. There was a contingency in there that we did not need to use, and so along with the paving, we're within the approved parameters for funding.
Steve, who came up with that estimate originally?
Our engineering tech did.
Oh.
And it was also reviewed by federal highway. This is a federal highway aid, a federal aid highway. They looked at those numbers and they agreed with those and accepted those. So
It's unusual that it goes lower, especially with asphalt.
you don't know. That's the thing, is we
Yeah.
went high with the estimate, and we also used a 10% contingency on top of that. And not knowing, it might be a couple years later till we actually do the paving project, so no one really knows what those numbers would be. So we went on the, on the caution side as far as our estimates.
There's one thing I'd just like to jump in and add. There is a distinction between federal highway projects and FEMA projects, and it basically comes down to the cost share. If a project is eligible for federal highway funding, it's covered at 100%, whereas with the FEMA projects, there's a cost share. 90% goes to the federal government, 5% to the state, and 5% locally. This project, the one Steve's talking about now, is federal highway.
So the fact that the bids came in under the estimate, that's money that goes back to the feds, I take it?
Well, this was a proposed project that was approved for a sum, so I don't believe we received payment for this yet, right, John? So this was only an estimate, so when we do our submittal, it'll be less than what we originally thought the submittal would be for the actual work.
That'll be a first in their experience.
Right, but we're not saving any money on the town budget. Well, I guess we're ready for a motion then, unless anybody has any questions. You have a question?
I have a question that doesn't really relate to whether I vote yes or no, but it just, and again, you probably don't even know the answer, but why do you think we only got one bid? I mean,
There's a few reasons for that. This particular job comes with some complicators because of the regulations and the demands on the contract. So some of your smaller contractors wouldn't bid on this. Lane is considered a contractor that would do larger projects and larger paving jobs, and there's only 3 really, or total competitors. And logistically, they're closest to Brattleboro. So I imagine, depending on what the schedules were or the demands, the other larger paving companies didn't bid on it. It's multiple layers of reasons. One is the contract, the complications of the contract, and the other is logistics.
There's a lot going on in Vermont paving-wise right now, isn't there?
There is.
Yeah.
Different. Yep.
Any other questions or comments? Well, then we're ready for a motion.
Anyone?
I move we award contract in the amount of $57,770 to Lane Construction for milling and resurfacing of William Street.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. And then the next matter on the agenda is the Cook Road preliminary engineering.
So this is another FEMA project where we actually lost the bridge. It was washed away during Irene on Cook Road. That's up by the Hamilton farm. And actually, in a short period of time, we did build a temporary bridge. We had a contract to build a temporary bridge to have access to that farm and the homes on that road. So this, again, is to build a permanent bridge. The structure that's there is considered a temporary structure, which has a value. And I'll let Hannah talk about this project. She's done a lot of work on it, and she can give you the background.
Steve said this is one of our 2 remaining FEMA projects, the other one being the outfall pipe at the wastewater treatment plant, which we are also moving forward with. This request for proposals was for preliminary engineering for a design-build project for the Cook Road Bridge. And design-build projects are similar to the West 91 over the West River, in which an engineering company and a construction company collaborate to provide us with a complete project. So these bids were received to do a comprehensive hydraulic study, to do geotechnical explorations, drop a RFP package to send out for the design build process, and also assist the town with reviewing any proposals that we receive. And of the 5 bids that we received, we are recommending Clough Harbor and Associates out of Keene, New Hampshire. And the one caveat with this is that there is always a possibility that the preliminary engineering could turn up and say that the project worksheet developed by FEMA initially is inaccurate, and we would have to do either a scope change or an improved project, which would set the project back pretty substantially in terms of time.
Now, the other thing is maybe you could talk about there's a difference and there's a range of prices and costs for these services, and we can talk also a little bit of how the engineer was selected.
The DPW staff, Steve, myself, and our engineering technician, Gary King, developed a scoring system to review all of the engineers. We rated the various proposals on experience with Vermont bridges, FEMA experience developing hydraulic analysis, geotechnical experience, the time required to do the work, and the cost proposal. And one of the things that was particularly important with us was FEMA experience, because they're so particular about getting exactly what they want so that we can get reimbursed for it.
Nice way of putting it.
And that is how we decided on Clough Harbor and Associates. They have worked very closely with Jamaica and many other towns in this area for FEMA-related Irene specifically projects.
Now, also, we probably should give a let the public know and the board know also the companies that did submit bids for this and the price ranges.
We also received bids from Ekman Engineering of Portsmouth, New Hampshire in the amount of $9,900. Hoyle Tanner of Burlington, Vermont in the amount of $16,900. Nobis Engineering of Concord, New Hampshire in the amount of $21,400. And SVE Associates of Brattleboro, Vermont in the amount of $13,500. And the Clough Harbor Associates of Keene in the amount of $16,000 was the company that we felt met our needs the most.
Well, you know there's a question here, you know, because they weren't the lowest.
Right.
So, but
this, the criteria that you use is actually recommended for these projects, and so it's important to make sure first you do this analysis of the different particular items you're looking for with the FEMA experience and the geotech.
Right.
And you really base your decision on that to begin with. Then the secondary part of the review is to actually look at the numbers. That's interesting. So you do a rating system, kind of a twofold rating system. This will also be used on the same type of rating system has been asked. We've been asked to use that same system when we look at the bridge.
Oh yeah, I just know that there's going to be some people out there that will say, "Wow, I heard a bid for $9,000." You know, so, and I know you have to look at all the criteria.
The Main Street sidewalk project was also done in the same manner. So it's a little bit different for us, but it's kind of exciting in a way too. Also to do a design build and to go through this. Our hope is that there's a cost savings to streamline the permits and actually come up with an innovative way to save money versus, you know, design it and then you build what I design.
Right.
A lot of times the contractors will work very closely with the engineer to come up with alternatives that, you know, hopefully will save the taxpayer money.
Yeah.
This $16,000, if it's endorsed, is this subject to FEMA reimbursement, or is this out of? So, and that's the 95 or 95-5 split, or
Originally,
95 and 5?
Originally, FEMA allocated $357,101.70 for the construction and engineering of the Cook Road permanent work.
At this point, we have no idea whether that's going to suffice.
We do
total.
not.
That's what you said before.
Correct.
But from this $16K, we're essentially paying $800.
Yeah.
Now, really what you have is an estimate, and now you have to go out and prove it.
Right.
And, you know, just looking at Sunset Lake Road Bridge, which is over $900,000 and about the same size span that could reach $1 million, it's safe to say that maybe those numbers are low.
That really blows my mind.
But it's the documentation, and the hydraulics survey also will determine the size of the bridge, because Remember, the original structure was smaller, and now we're trying to provide a structure that has a better hydraulic capacity, which will be larger, to more volume of water can go through that.
Are there any further questions or comments? Then we're ready for a motion.
To award a contract in the amount of $16,000 to Clough Harbor and Associates for preliminary engineering services associated with the design-build project to permanently replace Cook Road Bridge.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. If you could also tell us a little bit about what's going on with Strand Ave and what we can expect going forward.
Sure.
Please.
I'll try to go right to the point and be as brief as possible, but provide as much information as I can so people are educated to what this project's all about. As the board well knows, on July 16th, some of the residents on the Strand Avenue neighborhood came before the board to express some of their concerns, and one of the concerns was the size of the actual block of one of two walls that were being constructed there, and they also talked about the right-of-way easements. There was one neighbor that felt that they may need an easement. They talked about pedestrian safety, and they talked about the oversight of the project, or the lack of at the time, and also the town staff participation. Since July 16th, the project did move forward. There was a misunderstanding between engineering and the contractor on the size of the block that should have been installed. They had installed approximately 30% of the wall at that point, and taken down what was part of a wall and some earth embankments that were failing. So there was a fair amount of work that had been completed. The contractor and the engineering company came upon an agreement with the proper size block that should be installed. I think they both, one thought it was accepted, one thought that the contractor was using the proper size block, the contractor thought they had approval for the other. That's their situation, although it puts us as the owner in a bad situation because it delayed the project. I can say that the contractor and the engineer have worked in harmony, and also we've been working with the neighbors. After that July 16th meeting, we had several meetings with the neighbors and the contractor and the engineer to discuss the project with everybody that wanted to attend. We do have a master email list of all the residents. You know, there's approximately 20 homes. This isn't just Strand Avenue, it's all West Street, Brannan, other people in the neighborhood. We did receive good feedback and participation. Another one of the questions that was asked was of concern, I would say, is the width of the road. Hannah worked with the contractor and the engineer, and they actually laid out with markers to identify the actual width of the street. So some of the neighbors just weren't able to actually visualize it from the blueprint. But the actual stakes that were put in the ground could show the 16-foot wide roadway, which, you know, some feel satisfied that that's going to be good, and some don't. That's the reality of the project. Everything's moving along now. There's been this delay. The last time we were they were over there was, I would say, it was shortly after July into August 2nd was the actual shutdown. And the reason there was a shutdown is they had a certain amount of blocks in stock to continue building this wall, rebuilding the wall. And then there was a shutdown because they had to order new blocks of that size and have to cure for 28 days. So we have continued to be vigilant about visiting the area, you know, with concerns about possible erosion and such, and we've had many meetings with the neighbors, even though the contractor's been gone. And I think now we're in a place that the contractor will remobilize, and they'll be here on Thursday, and another notice has been put out to the residents. So we're hopeful that we can complete the project. We've talked to the contractor, and I would say it'd be the last part of October to the first part of November, which will meet our needs. My big concern from Public Works is the fact that we need to do our winter maintenance, and I think that's a lot of some of the less vocal residents, their concerns are to be able to utilize that road in the winter. The other thing we've heard quite a bit about from the neighbors is that in the close proximity of the work is that they've actually enjoyed the peace and quiet now that the road's been closed for so long. So full circle, there's things that happen during this project that aren't desirable, but I think we're moved in a positive motion, and I know that Dave wanted just me to update the board so they knew, because these citizens did come to you, and that we have responded to their concerns and addressed them.
Do we anticipate, Steve, that the remaining bricks will be delivered Thursday, and that there's then going to be a consistent period of work,
Yes.
and that pretty soon thereafter we're going to see both retaining walls built?
Yes. Hannah had contacted the company today, and once they go up a certain amount of elevation, then they're able to put more earth in and compact it, and then start the final poured wall. They didn't want to start the poured wall because the part of the road's still dug out, and they would be taking a chance, and we don't want that at this point. So we benefit by just relaxing and taking a step back. So we feel confident that they'll get it done.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Anybody have any questions about that? Anybody on the board or anybody who's in attendance? Thank you very much for coming this evening.
Thank you.
Yes. Thanks, Steve.
The next item on the agenda is the FY15 budget preliminary discussions. So I asked for this matter to be placed on the agenda at this point. When we look at select board goals later in the meeting, year-round budgeting and working to better plan the budget is one of the goals that we included as of April 2013, and I wanted to have a preliminary discussion at this point about whether members of the board have any thoughts or any goals or anything they want to articulate about directions we should be considering in giving direction to the administration about budget to be presented to us in whatever form. That's the reason that I put this item and that I asked this item to be on the agenda. I think that in last year's budget formulation process, the board really didn't provide direction in any meaningful form to administration before the budget was generated, and even afterwards there was significant lack of discussion about what we were really trying to achieve in terms of the budget for the year. And I wanted to start the discussion early and in a deliberate way. So that's why we're here. It seems to me, and going right to the substance of the question, John, do you know, just off the top of your head, the expenditures? What is the budget for the year?
This year?
Yeah.
14.9.
$14.9 million. And what do we anticipate, if you know, the additional bond payment is going to be next year, just approximately?
I just don't recall off the top of my head, but it is significant. It's we will be making the interest payment on the second bond that we issue, as well as the first principal payment and interest payment on the $5 million. So it is a substantial increase.
So that's 2015?
Yep.
And that was going to be a heavy year, right?
Exactly. And so we're talking certainly a six-figure number that starts with 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, something in that range?
Yes.
All right. And so we're going to be facing significant budget pressure this year because $14.9 million, just plus the interest, the additional interest on the bond, could easily take us up to 15, 3, 4, 5. as a budget figure for the year. I don't know exactly what's in the capital plan for this coming year, although I've looked at it preliminarily. I don't know exactly what's going to be sought. And just to run the budget at status quo, and Patrick and I have had these discussions quite a bit, to run the budget at status quo, given increases in personnel costs, insurance, fuel, and other coverages, health insurance, we can certainly anticipate that there could come in with an increase just in the budget without the interest payment of 1, 2, 3%. Easily, it would seem to me. And so I want to get some sense from the board about what we want to ask the administration for. If anybody has any views about that.
I do.
All right, Kate, so go ahead.
I'm sure
That's why I put it on the agenda. So I'd like to hear from everybody
Right.
to start communicating that over to administration now.
Yeah, and
deliberately.
Yeah, I think the one thing I heard during the election time, and the one thing I still hear when I go to the grocery store, is that everybody's concerned about their taxes and everybody's concerned about their own budget. So we have to be concerned about the town budget, and I think, and I don't want to scare people when I say this, but I think, to me, everything's on the table for us to examine and to think about. And just because we do something now doesn't necessarily mean we can afford to do it in the future. But again, it doesn't mean that we're not going to do everything that we're doing now. But I think that we have to be very thoughtful and be very open to what we may have to do. And we had a brief conversation about this at the agenda setting meeting. And for me, in order to make decisions about, what the budget should be or what it should look like, is that I would love it if the administration can come in with a, here's if we level fund it. Here's if we, allow everybody a X percentage increase. Here's what would happen if we had to cut it by 5%. Just to give us a sense, because I don't have a sense of what that means. If we wanted to add to the budget, whether we wanted to keep it the same or whether we wanted to cut. And also for me, just because we say everybody come in and tell us if you had to cut it 5% or you wanted to increase 5%, that doesn't mean everyone, we may decide one department needs more and one department needs less. So I guess the upshot for me is I think we have to come into this with everything's on the table, so that we can have a clear perspective of what we're doing.
John, you want to go next?
Yeah, no, I think Kate hit most of it right on the head, and it's not and the department heads and all the, the people that are going to be involved in this, this is, I think, going to be the year that, like you say, there is no sacred cow. Everything is going to be, and I just really want people to realize that this is not a personal thing. It's not a vendetta against anybody. It's just that I think this year is going to be very, very tough to try to maintain. I'm hoping a balanced budget, but I really don't know yet, because we don't know at this point where we're going to be at. But that is the one thing that I hear time and time again, and I know probably every small town hears the same thing. But Southern Vermont, for whatever reasons, we are hurting down here, and we really got to find the reason why we're hurting, and then adjust accordingly. And I think this is the year that we're going to really have to adjust. And again, without having some solid figures in mind, we really don't know where we're going to be at. But I think this is a belt tightening year. So.
Anybody on this side want to speak to the issue?
I think, points well taken. I think that it's a sobering task. It's an important task. I think that as much information as we can be given about, possible places where there might be a sustained cut that wouldn't interfere with the critical work of a particular department. I know it's going to be difficult. I trust this board to be thoughtful about it. I trust us to take into consideration the impact that
potential cuts might have. I think as a community, we're all in the practice necessarily of adjusting our own budgets and whatever organizations or businesses we're involved in. So I think, it's going to be a microcosm of what I think all of us are having to take on to a certain extent. And the commitment is to be really thoughtful and as well informed as we possibly can in that difficult task.
I'm really kind of want to reinforce a little bit of what everybody said and then add a couple of things. But in particular, what I've enjoyed is, and why I agree that I think we're going to be able to, we're up to the task. I'm not sure it won't be easy, but I think we can do it. We've had a few months now to get to know each other and to work together, and I think to build some trust and especially to listen to each other. And I think people have really been very responsive on the board, and I appreciate that a great deal. And I think David's done a great job of keeping us on the job and also making sure that we're paying attention to the processes and the policies and the roles of the town, the employees as opposed to the board, and those sort of important aspects. I don't think any of that. I don't think that's going to make it easy, but I think that it's going to be harder even than you've said, because so far people have only talked about cuts. And I think we need to look at revenues. Again, I think we need to reconsider the 1% sales tax that was not accepted last time around, but which was intended in large part to pay for the police fire. I think we need to talk again honestly about that and do some real research in terms of other communities that have done that and what the effect has actually been on the local businesses as opposed to what people think it might be. Also for service providers like optometrists and physicians and anybody else that's providing services, we need to find a way, and I think Dave articulated this maybe a couple of times, maybe only to me, but probably to other people as well, that people come into this community and use this community. They drive on the roads, they visit, they use the services, but they don't contribute to the tax, to the cost of those services, and we need to find a way to get revenue from those people. And I think that the sales tax and the services tax is one of the things we have to look at. It's ugly. Nobody wants to raise taxes, but nobody wants to cut programs or fire people. So I think we have to look at the revenue side. I also hope that we had started the process with the appraiser of identifying all the service consumers in our community, institutions that use town services, that consume police and fire resources and use our roads, but don't pay. And I try to identify the value of those services and then talk about how they can participate more in paying for those services. So I think those are difficult issues. That one's not going to be resolved. I don't think we're going to be dealing with that one just in this year or for this next budget year. But we have to look at those revenues. I mean, I don't see any fat. I don't see anybody standing up and saying, well, actually, we don't need those things. We don't need that cruiser. We don't need this sidewalk being paved. Because we do. There's nothing in there that we don't need. So we have to find a way to pay for it that's not coming, if as much as possible, it's not coming out of the property tax that's already at its limit. So that's my different focus on it, and it's something I talk about a lot, is that we have to look at the really tough choices, which are taxing people that are right now paying. Oh, and one other thing. Now as if that's not enough. No, but Kate, you mentioned level fund. What it would look like if we level funded, and I don't know if we are going to have enough information about how much things are going to be like how much the health insurance is going to go up, so that we know that something else is going to have to go down to be able to do that, or how soon we'll be able to do that. Mm-hmm. But I think and we also can't do the other thing, which I think you may have implied. We didn't say specifically level service. What'll it cost if we just keep everything just exactly as it is? How much is it going to go up? We know it's going to go up, and how much will that be? I know, we don't know that until we get a lot more data, a lot more what costs are going to go up.
I'll speak, but Patrick, why don't you go next?
Okay. Obviously, I appreciate the feedback, and I appreciate that the board is taking the time at this stage in the budget process to begin to provide feedback. That I think to David's point, that is somewhat new. I can bring back any number of different scenarios that that the board might ask for, whether that be same level of service as last year. What would that look like with the cost of living increases? I could bring that back. I could bring back any number of different other options. So it would be, if that's what the board would like to see, actually nailing down some sort of levels that you would like to see would be helpful. Second thing, I appreciate the fact, Dave, that you brought up the potential to consider taking a second look at revenue options. If the expense side is going to be examined thoroughly, it seems to me the revenue side should be as well. And then lastly, and not to rain on the parade, when we left the budgeting process last year, the capital plan had roughly, I can't remember whether it was $2.6 or $2.3 million in this coming year's capital expenses. I'm beginning the process with the department heads right now to sort of go through that and see, is there anything that, we might be able to push out, do so, in a safe manner? Are there any things that we've, covered elsewhere? We're going to continue to look at that. But where we started the process, where we concluded it at the end of last year, there was over $2 million in expense in capital projects and equipment. And there is no reason to believe, as with last year, that we'll be able to find some fund balance with which to tap into. There really aren't going to be any more change in nickels and dimes in the couch cushions that we're going to find. So it's going to be a different year entirely. And if the board can articulate some position points that you would like for me to bring back, I will work with the town staff and we'll do that.
So I think that there are two starting points that we need to have information about. One of them is level funding, this year's budget to next year's budget. I think probably it's only realistic to say level funding, recognizing that the additional interest payments and principal payment on the bonds are on top of that level funding. Because I don't think that we can realistically, at this point, anticipate saying we want a $14.9 million budget next year and we're paying the interest out of that money as well. Right. I just don't think that's realistic at this point. So I think we clearly need to know what the town government would look like if we were paying $14.9 million plus whatever additional bond payments there are for next year. And I understand that's going to involve probably service cuts and capital expense cuts because there are necessary increases in fuel, liability insurance, health insurance, wages, tower rents that we're going to talk about in a little while. But I think we need to have a budget that contemplates level funding as I've just described it. And it really seems to me that in the first instance, we need to look to the administration, department heads, town manager, to be making the various recommendations as to where cuts can come from, and then we have to make the choice among them. But we need to look to you first because you're running the day-to-day. I would then say that we should see what a status quo level of service budget would look like so that we can see those two alternatives for starters. And to the extent we're going to need to look at things differently later on, we may ask for additional information, but for right now, those seem to be reasonable starting points. I would say two other things at this point. One of them may go over like a brick, but I'm just going to drop it at this point. The legislature did adopt in the last 2 years a requirement that municipalities switch to pay-as-you-throw. And I'm not saying this as a mechanism for saving money. What I'm saying is that there's a provision in Title 24, I think it's 2002A, which says municipalities shall have pay-as-you-throw sometime in 2015. And that's a requirement that we go to a system that charges individual landowners or residents, I don't recall exactly the language, proportionate amount for disposal of solid waste, either measured by weight or by volume. And that's not a matter of discretion at this point. We have to be transitioning to that system in the next, I think, 2-year period. And so I do think that as part of this planning right now, I need to ask, and I'm saying it out loud so everybody's aware of it, it's not going to be something that's up for town meeting vote or for voter approval, because the Vermont legislature has said this is the way it's going to be. I think that I'm going to ask the town manager to work with Moss preliminarily, who's been looking at it and planning it. At least, and we might ask Moss to come to the next meeting, at least to talk about what some of that logistics might look like. And then we're going to have to make a plan for transition. I would also note that the legislation says that we have to have education campaign as part of the transition, and that just distributing pamphlets is not going to meet the requirement. So that's one thing. Of course, that will mean that we're essentially going to have to be collecting money from the sale of bags, which will be an additional revenue stream whether we like it or not. The other thing I'm going to say is, and I thought not even addressing it might be the way to go, but I can't imagine that there's the fight in anybody's belly for the sales tax again, not after the town meeting vote last year. But I know that Dave has talked about it before, and I'm not really clear, because we've looked at it, what the other revenue sources might be. But we obviously need to continue looking at that as well. So those are the directions I would ask you, Patrick, at least preliminarily, to bring back what would be level funded, what would be level service, and we'll then work going forward from there. And anybody else got any other comments? This would be a good time.
I just had one thing about, and I'm amazed you mentioned it, because about the pay-as-you-throw. Because I just gave Patrick, I was up in Burlington, and I just gave Patrick a single stream system, you know, compromise on how this all can work. And I just wanted him to look at it. And I just wanted to say that there are other ways, you know, instead of a pay-as-you-throw, there are other systems out there that would make us legally, that would get us legally with the state of Vermont. And I've been pushing it for this since 2008. For a single stream system, so it's no news to anybody. So, but I just happened to have a pamphlet and gave it.
On that same topic, if we're going to invite Moss Kelly or invite Bob Sherman from the Waste Management System.
Sure, I think that's good.
Because they're already on it.
There's a variety of different
ways
in which we need to build a plan. Right. I think that's absolutely right. We do need to start building a plan for compliance, and it should be part of this year's process, at least for starters, because it's got to happen over the course of the next year, and that's what the legislation requires.
And just one other quick thing, just
Go
that,
for it.
because I want people to be aware that there may be some services that, you know, and God love Brattleboro, but you know, you don't want to give away, you don't want to give anything out, but there may be some services that may have to, you know, we have to look at, you know, that may have to get cut. I don't know, you know, it's just everything, like Kate said, everything is on the board. So.
Anything else on this topic? Sorry for that sobering exercise, but I thought it needed to start. Howard.
Patrick, can you clarify, when you said the capital plan, did you say there was $2 million in projects that weren't done last year that are carrying over, or what do you mean when you ended last year?
Well, all right, what's the best way to put this? When we finally passed a budget last year, at that point in time, the capital plan for fiscal 2015 had little over $2 million in projects in it. That's projects, that's vehicles, that's equipment, that's where we left the capital plan last as a group, as a town. So last year was somewhere in the neighborhood of $765,067.
And 70 cents.
I don't remember the 70 cents, but it was roughly that amount. And then for fiscal 2015, it was a little over $2 million. So I was just reminding everybody sort of where we left off.
I mean, I've looked preliminarily at those numbers, and it's not clear to me whether that $2 million is something that we're really looking at having to expend this year. But certainly the capital plan, which goes over like a 10-year period, next year's was $2 million, and that's not realistic given the budgetary situation we're in right now. And so that means maintenance is going to be pushed out. For example, I don't see Steve here, but oh yeah, there's Steve. I think the Washington Street retaining wall was in the next year's budget, but it failed this year. And so Steve, being able to see into the future, had put it into next year's, and we already spent the money this year.
I think by the time this makes its way to the board in these two formats, it's likely going to be a different number.
Very different.
Thank you.
All right, so the next item on the agenda is the Wantosticket Communications Tower, and I want to thank fire personnel for waiting patiently so long. If you want to come to the table, and if the police chief also wants to come up to the table, and I want to thank you for being so patient as well. And maybe Patrick, if you could start by explaining what's going on with the tower.
We're here?
Yeah. That would be helpful.
Just to start off, I guess I want to direct everybody's attention to the tower that we're talking about. It's the one on top of Wantosticket Mountain that you see from downtown Brattleboro up on top of the hill. So why are we here?
There's a light.
Yep. It's a beautiful tower. A couple of months ago, the town received notice from the tower owner. The town of Brattleboro doesn't own that tower, nor do we own the property that the tower sits on. Property's owned by state of New Hampshire. The tower's owned by a company called CTI Towers. The tower was constructed quite some time ago. It used to serve as part of the backhaul network for Adelphia Communications and for Comcast Communications in support of their cable television services. As technologies have changed, that became less of a utility for them. And as it stands today, the town of Brattleboro is the only broadcasting entity on the tower. The tower is the location for police radios. It's also a location for fire department radios. One of the things that's important to understand is that communication systems are different for the fire department and for the police department. And because they are different, they differ in terms of their propagation. And so finding a site which is capable of serving the needs of both systems is not always easy to do, and this particular location, in fact, serves that purpose. Getting back to why we're talking about it, CTI Towers reached out to the town. We had previously had a very favorable contract, and what they were letting us know is that future contracts would not be so favorable. From my experience with other tower projects, market rents for a tower like this could be $2,000 a month. They're asking the town to sign a 5-year lease in the amount of $1,000 a month plus our use of electricity.
And the rent before was?
$10 a year. It's a significant increase, no doubt about it. And we are the only entity today that makes use of this particular location. So I've asked the police and fire departments to be here to speak to the need for this particular tower as it relates to their differing communication technologies. I would also remind the board that one of the reasons I'm bringing this forward is that our recommendation would be for us to sign this lease. And this is an expense which would hit both the police department budget and the fire department budget, one which has not been budgeted for. And because I cannot immediately identify an offset, I thought it was important to bring this to the board's attention and to let them know of the somewhat urgency of the matter. So I would kick it over to the gentleman to my right to talk a little bit about the importance of this tower as it relates to our ability to serve as emergency first responders.
When you're speaking to the topic, if you could also address, if you can, what it's going to take to plan going forward to determine whether this is the best site, whether this is a necessary site, and what it would be to transition to different system or integrated system that's in a different location, if you've thought about that.
I can be very brief. This tower and the operations in it are critically important to the police department. All of our cruiser and our base radios, the frequency, the signal goes up to that tower and then is sent back. So that's our main repeater. If that goes down, we have one other repeater in town, but the signals go up to there first. We have no backup plan right now for that. I'm not a radio expert. Joe is.
I won't go that far.
There's a hot seat right there, Joe.
We've got 2 antennas and a microwave dish up on the mountain, on the tower. The so-called brain box of our radio equipment is in the basement of Central Station. The brains talk to that tower. The 3 sites, and on top of it, we've got 3 sites: Central Station, Pleasant Valley, and Ames Hill. The mountain site talks to those 3 sites. So basically, when somebody transmits on a radio, the Central Station signal picks it up, talks to the mountain site rebroadcasts it back to the other 3 sites. Ours is called a voting system. So one of those 3 sites, whichever site picks it up the strongest, then rebroadcasts it to wherever it has to go. So that was the new system that we put in back in 2006. Very complicated system. It's a very modern system. Without that site, we would have, again, the same as Chief Wren, we would lose a lot of coverage in town, a lot of weak pockets scattered throughout, and some areas of town probably no radio communications at all. My biggest worry with it is buildings like CNS, the high school, some of the factories. We have issues sometimes talking from inside some of these bigger buildings just outside to the truck. Some of those buildings will become near impossible to communicate from within, which now creates a huge safety issue if we lost that site. Joe's been doing some, Joe is the fire alarm superintendent, took dealerships twice, and he also does, I'd say, 95% of all the radio work in town, and he's been doing a lot of research on some of the options, and let him have it.
So, as the chiefs both said, this site is very critical to the day-to-day operations of both of our agencies, and the town has been getting a stellar deal from them for quite some time, and I wish that could continue, but unfortunately this new company has taken over and they want to make some money. How our systems work are 2 totally different styles. They both use that site as a critical link to the rest of the town. We have, currently it is the most ideal site that we have available. If the fire department was to lose that site, whether it be because we decided not to renew the lease, or if the power goes out and the standby power doesn't activate, we have to go into what we call backup mode, which is completely abandoning our new radio system that we have and switching over to a single repeater located at the Pleasant Valley radio tower. So it is very critical, and we do have, you know, if in the event of a power failure or anything like that, we do have measures that we take to ensure that things are done in a timely manner so that we don't lose that site. We started to occupy that site in 2006 when we received a substantial Homeland Security grant to upgrade our entire radio system. That was done in 2006, which added a tower site at Ames Hill Road, which we do have a lease for there. We pay probably $3,000 a year for that site, which is a pretty good deal. It's a very good site, very accessible by vehicle. That is one of the hindrances to this Wantasticate site, is either hike to it or take a four-wheeler. It's much more enjoyable on your feet than on a four-wheeler, I can say. But there are some issues with that site that are displeasing to us. I've been in contact with the folks that designed our new radio system, and they are receptive and willing to come in and look at some different areas in town. What the end goal is, I think we'd like to sign this one lease for 5 years, and within that 5-year span, be off of that tower and onto something either existing in Brattleboro, or if the town decides to establish their own site in town and maybe turn the tides and start renting space to other people as a revenue stream. So eventually, hopefully, the goal is if there's a site available to us that's on town property or existing somewhere that we can either develop or use that will service both agencies, then the ultimate goal within the next 5 years of the term of this lease is to develop that site, and hopefully, you know, instead of paying the $12,000 a year to this other company, we'll start paying that to ourselves, and eventually it'll be a revenue stream for other things.
Talk about line of sight.
Yeah, the biggest complicator between the two is we have to have a line of sight to every tower. So that's why the Wantasticate Mountain is very appealing, is because it's very high, and it gets line of sight to our other two towers and the police department's tower, which is up by SIT. That is the biggest problem with our radio system, is they have to be line of sight. So there's a few options that we've discussed with Patrick that may work, different sites that could get us high enough, but they would have to be looked at by professionals and do a study as to what would work and what wouldn't. But that is the complicator, is the line of sight and why it has to be so high.
Do you think that it's realistic that within 5 years the issues will be resolved, and do you think that we need the full 5 years to accomplish that? I know it's early in the process, but what do you
With the
think
budget
based upon what
information that you just laid out, I don't think it's possible.
I think that, you know, it gives us a goal to get to. I think we're going to need every bit of that 5 years to get where we need to be.
Yeah.
Because of the budget constraints, and, you know, if we need to find a grant to do this, then that's probably going to be the only way we can develop a site that is town-owned, given the budget constraints that we're up against.
I would think it'd be reasonable that within that 5-year period of time we could come to understand, do we have within our easy reach alternatives, and if we do not, do we have within, do we have the capacity to either construct something, and then if we're actually getting to the point where we're talking about constructing something of some actual consequence that has some real dollar figures to it, then we need to start taking a look at, well, you know, is the system as a whole the most sensible for us? So, you know, it's the type of exploration which could start out small and then get quite a bit quite a bit more involved. So, and if we got to a point where we were looking at constructing a tower, you know, that's nothing we're going to do in a year. That would take several years, I suspect. When you consider how are we going to pay for it, considering, you know, do we need to negotiate with any particular property owner, when considering do we need to, you know, shepherding the project through 248A, all of which would take a considerable amount of time. So we kind of find ourselves in a unfortunate situation where the owner of something we are quite fond of is seeking something closer to market rents, and
you have to understand our concern here a little bit. I mean, we've been talking budget, and you know, and then all of a sudden we get hit with this, and in the overall picture, it doesn't seem like a lot, but when you go from $10 a year to $12,000, you know, it's a huge jump. And so my concern is that, like David just said, do we need that 5-year? Because it almost seems like a hostage thing, you know, like they're really holding this over our head because we really do need that tower. And we're the last ones on it. So this is the only place that, you know, that they're going to make their money is off of this. So I'm a little upset with the hostage thing. And I personally don't want to be locked into a 5-year. I think we can do it quicker than that. Again, I'm just one of 5, and I'm hoping that we could do it quicker than that. And I understand your guys' concern because it's a perfect site. I mean, you couldn't ask for anything better. That up high and line of sight is ideal. But it just feels like, and I'm not saying we're being taken advantage of, because we did have a good deal for a long time.
In truth, it was better than good.
It was better than good.
If you consider the two expenses,
exactly,
which one actually seems more reasonable?
Yeah, I know, I know, but it just, you know, it hits at a time when everybody's looking at every penny.
John, I think to address a couple of your concerns is where we're at today is that Joe's been actively working on the situation. I know Patrick's got a couple of inquiries out there that he's working on. We've taken a map of the town. Wayne Stiers and Joe are plotting town-owned sites on the map with elevations. Those will go at some point to the radio. We've been working with the person that installed our radio system because he knows the system. They did a radio study back in 2006 to plot these sites. To, you know, they told us these are the good sites. So they've got all of the background on this. We'll give him those sites along with some others that may be, you know, favorable for us, and let him take them and work his magic with the computer and stuff and see what we come up with for town-owned property. Can we do it in less than 5 years? You know, I don't know what it takes for permitting and stuff, but if you guys were to tell us to get it done, I'm sure we could get it done if the money was there.
Well, again,
we obviously want to come up with the best solution for everybody.
Right.
Get, you know, a favorable.
Right. And we certainly don't want to be down on communicating. But, you know, the other thing, you guys have had, we just got this dumped into our laps in the last 3 days. So you guys have had a little bit of time to think about it. You know, and it comes before the board and we go, God, $10 a year to $12,000 a year. That's not a small increment. I mean, that's huge. And so, again,
well, we were blindsided just like you were.
Yeah, but at least you've had a little bit of time to think about it, and you know, and it's, you know, and I look at it and I go, God, it just seems not fair. So, you know, and we did talk about it a little bit. You know, what is it the best solution that we have? You know, is there anything else out there? And you don't want to reinvent the wheel when something's working, but you know, we want to make sure we're getting the best that we can. You know, and I just don't like being locked into a 5-year. That's $60,000. You know, that's
I don't think they're giving us a choice, are they, Patrick?
Well, let's leave that one off the table for a second. Anybody else from the board have any comments or anything they want to say or any questions?
A couple things. The other one thing John didn't mention is that the money's we don't have that in the budget. That's the other surprise and can't seem to see where it's going to come from. But the other thing that when we talked about this earlier, I didn't think about this, but I'm kind of surprised that I know 2006 wasn't that long ago, but in terms of communications and electronics, could have been a century. And I'm surprised we're talking about building a tower and using towers instead of talking about satellites. And I'm wondering, is there any information from other other agencies around the state or around the country that have gone digital and aren't bothering with the land-based stuff anymore? And if we're going to spend money, why go back to the previous technology? If we have to spend money and to upgrade it all, let's spend it on what's going to be coming rather than what's already gone, and not have these problems anymore, and not have these dead spots.
And that can be a question that we ask when we have these folks come in. I can't speak to the digital.
Yeah,
I can't give you an answer to that, but we can certainly ask the folks that deal with it every day. And just for a reference, the system that we have is kind of a state-of-the-art system, and they're still installing this identical system, across the country. So it's not that outdated, but certainly.
But you're also getting reduced bandwidth now and bleed over. Yeah, there are all kinds of problems that are coming along with the increased use of the radio waves.
Yeah, we weren't happy when we got the news about this because we were given a few different numbers. It's been a couple years in the making where when we went on the tower, Adelphia and Comcast, the technology changed. They had no use for the tower. They really didn't care about it. So they said, yeah, go ahead, and we'll charge you this much just to say that we charge you. We know it didn't even cover the electricity that we use up there. But we were given a number probably last year, and we worked it into the budget and had planned for that number. But then they came with this much greater number. So right now we are kind of in a rough spot, and unfortunately, and the quicker we can find an alternative and act on it would be better for the town for sure. But what's that going to take, and how much is that going to take to get to that point? Whatever we're going to spend in 5 years for this contract, we could conceivably spend for a new tower and then some. So right now it's what we have to face and figure out what we're looking at for long term is where we need to go.
But the reason to recommend that the agreement at this point is really, I think, just to buy us some time.
Yeah.
Anybody else from the board? I had some separate concerns after reading through the contract, word by word and line by line. I thought that it was a very one-sided contract, and there were some specific provisions in the contract that I thought were not finally edited through, which didn't make a lot of sense to me.
Were you a lawyer?
I am, yeah, and I was reading it with a lawyer's eye towards reviewing this contract, and I had trouble with it. What I'd like to, and I will say that coming into this meeting, and when we discussed the contract issue in executive session, which is something that we have the ability to do, I was leaning towards either seeking to table this or seeking to, I might even vote against it, but I think based upon everything I've heard, what I'd like to do is I'm going to move to authorize the interim town manager in consultation with town attorney and the chair of the select board to continue negotiating with CTI Towers for continued radio operations on the Watastiga Mountain Tower, and following those negotiations to execute a contract with CTI.
Can I ask one question on that?
That's my motion. And
Would you
if
accept an
we're,
amendment to come back to the board
Okay.
with the contract?
I might consider that, depending on the view of the board.
I don't like the 5-year term.
Yep.
So I will tell you right now, I'm going to vote against that. So, because I think if you would word it in a way where there may be a chance of him coming back and with a yay or nay, whether they would be willing to negotiate. And I think your gut feeling is that ain't going to happen. So I think we should give it a try. But if that's the motion that you want to present, that's...
No, I've had a request for a friendly amendment, and I'm listening to a discussion. I'm not sure that this is the most precise parliamentary approach, but,
Okay.
Anybody else have any comments at this point?
I have one that I'd like to make. I think just since hearing about this in executive session and discussing it, my feeling is that the stakes are so high. We're talking about, really a massive amount of safety that this tower provides. And while I am right with you on not liking how quickly the cost increased, I feel like we do need to proceed with the absolute awareness of the kind of safety that tower currently provides. Go ahead.
May I add one thing to that?
Go for it.
And I agree. And I can't believe that, who's the company? CTI? Would be that cold. And I'm going to say it right out, would be that cold to say, well, then take your stuff down. I just think that it's unreasonable what they're asking for. And that's.
I think part of the rub lies in the termination provisions in the contract. Because I think that termination provisions can be drafted in different ways, and I think that's a matter that could be addressed during ongoing negotiations. I also think that to the extent that we negotiate and work together, the town manager in consultation with the town attorney and the chair, and we get to the point where we're ready for the contract, we can also very quickly notice up a meeting, special meeting,
yes,
to endorse a contract. So
That needs to be in your motion.
Well, no, so I am willing to accept that old friendly amendment there. And what I'm going to say, I'm going to remove the language about authorizing the town manager to execute the new contract, and instead to provide subject to approval by the select board after continued negotiations, either at the next regularly scheduled meeting or at a specially warned meeting.
I'm fine with that.
And so I'm then going to repeat the motion so we're clear. I think that'd probably help Jan, who's looking at me.
Jan, how you doing?
But that's the goal. That's the goal that I'm now going to say. So I withdraw my prior motion, and I move that the select board authorize the interim town manager in consultation with the town attorney and the select board chair to negotiate with CTI Towers for continued radio operations on the Wetaskica Mountain Tower, and to present a contract to the select board for approval, either at the next select board meeting or before at a specially warned meeting. Is there any further discussion? Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Thank you, gentlemen, for helping us with this
Thanks,
difficult
guys.
topic. You too, Patrick. And so the next item on the agenda is town manager search. The schedule that we presented in public session in July provided an application deadline for job ads for this town manager position of August 30th. And so that August 30th deadline has passed. Vermont League of Cities and Towns, we understand, has received between 40 and 45 applications. They are reviewing and ranking those applications and entering information about them into a grid. And we anticipate having those applications here for review by the Select Board within the next week. So thereafter, we're going to be making plans to screen down that list of candidates so that we can begin meeting with Select Board candidates. There will probably be 2 rounds of meetings. One where I anticipate we'll screen the list down to between 4 and 7 or 8 candidates for a first interview, and then we would hope to bring back 2 or 3 candidates thereafter. Tentatively, we are hoping to do this first round of interviews in the last week in September. And I think the topic that's on for discussion right now is what is the process we're going to use for paring down the list, both from the 45 or thereabouts applications we've received to the candidates who will be interviewed in the first round, who will participate in that first round of interviews, and then what will the second round look like. So that's the topic that's on for discussion. Anybody from the Select Board want to speak to that at this point? Got any ideas, or should I just go ahead?
I think you're doing fine.
Use the stairway then.
Well, okie dokie. So I'm just going to continue then. Preliminarily, I think that the most effective way, and what I'm going to suggest to the Select Board, is that after we receive the applications, that we meet in executive session sometime in the next 2 weeks under personnel matters to go over the applications and then to develop a list of candidates, probably between 4 and 8 candidates who will be interviewed for the first round. And preliminarily, what I think makes the most sense is for the first round of interviews to be conducted. It's personnel matter. They're going to be conducted in an executive session. But for those interviews to involve the Select Board with a number of other representatives potentially, including the interim town manager, who's going to assist us through the process, maybe a department head or 2, and then maybe 1 or 2 citizen representatives, maybe. But that the interviews in that first round will be conducted by the Select Board with the other people in attendance. I think that that first screening round, the goal would be to bring us down to 2 or 3 final candidates. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I think that we'd like to probably have a process of interviews by which the finalist candidates would meet with the Select Board again, potentially, with a group of town employees, including town manager, department heads, and maybe other employees, and other staff members, and also potentially a meeting and an interview by a group of a citizens group, and that we would ask both the employee focus group and the citizen focus group to provide their feedback back to the Select Board, which ultimately will be making the decision after the second round of interviews. That's what I'm contemplating right now, and I wonder what the rest of the board members or anybody who's in attendance, there being nobody left, might think about that topic. But if nobody's got anything to say, that's fine too.
I'm happy with that. I think that'll work. How's that?
I like that.
Quick and concise.
All right.
Next item.
All right. So I think what we're going to do is contemplating that ultimately a citizens committee will be formed for an interview round in the second round of interviews. We're going to put an agenda item on the agenda for next meeting to set a date by which applications should be received.
David, do we know how many we want to have on that?
I think we're going to form the committee. We're going to make a decision next time about forming the committee,
Okay.
about application date, and about the charge of that committee, which will probably be along the lines of to have a meeting, an executive session with finalist candidates and to provide feedback back to the select board. And I hope we'll be able to do this on the meeting at the 16th or 17th, at the 17th, and then for the October 1st meeting, probably already have the application. So we'll probably be closing applications on the 26th or 27th.
So that'll be fairly quick.
It will be fairly quick.
Yeah.
So to the extent that there's publicity going out through the press at this point, it's certainly to let people in the community know that we are going to be forming a citizens committee to participate in the second round of interviews, and that we're going to make a final decision about that committee at the meeting on the 17th, including establishing the charge of that committee at that time, and that we will probably be taking applications by the 26th so that the committee can be formed on the 1st.
And this is aggressive. This is.
Well, we'll see if we can get it done.
No, it's moving along, so.
We'll see if we can get it done.
Right.
All right, is there anything further about the town manager search, Patrick? Think I missed anything?
No, I think you got it. I think you got it. The 26th is the right
2 days
date.
notice of when the application review day is going to be.
Oh, yeah, yeah. We'll also be in touch, and that'll be through the town manager, secretary, and the interim town manager about scheduling the interviews after we screen them, because we're also going to have an executive session probably late next week to screen through and probably try to pick between 4 and 8 people to meet within the first round.
Yeah, that's what I meant. To
Yeah.
As soon as possible.
As soon as possible. Yep. Okay. Unless there's anything further, is there anything further on that item of a town manager search? The last item on the agenda is review of select board goals. David Scholes asked for a review of the select board goals to be on the agenda. And so, I don't know, Dave, if you want to lead the discussion, I can lead the discussion. We have select board goals that we adopted right after the new board was constituted in mid-April.
How we doing?
Pretty good, I think.
Well, that's,
You know?
that's the whole idea,
Right.
is that if you set these goals, we need to have a look. And there may be some, I think there are some we kind of haven't touched yet. And Donna wasn't here when we
I was
established them,
not,
so.
and I would not have accepted my fabulous appointment had I not really respected the goals, so I'm glad to be sitting here.
All right.
Unfortunately, that's why we establish them until you're.
So-
on board.
Thank you.
I think probably that the best way to approach this discussion now is really just to ask anybody who believes that goals have not been tended to address them and so that we can really determine if it's realistic for us to be working on those goals given what's on our plate. So I'm going to really turn that over to anybody who's wants to speak to them any further, because I've reviewed them and I think we're working on what we can, and I don't really know that I think that there's more we can do, but that's, I think, the way to organize this discussion. Anybody have anything?
I'm waiting for David.
Okay,
Yes.
I didn't
I'm
want
leaving
to
it in
just,
your charge.
I didn't want to just jump
No.
in. I think because, I mean, there are a few things I wanted to mention, but there's nothing really outstanding. I don't
Right.
think that we're really screwing up anywhere. I just think that.
Oh, I think we are.
No, that's,
At
the
least
screw
not on
ups are
paper.
coming, right. But it's just, organizationally, it just makes sense to look at your goals and
Yep.
do it consciously, not just throw them out and not. The only things I would recommend we try to get to, one actually is going to be harder, but under economic development, increased emphasis on attracting, developing new businesses and business opportunities. And aside from the fact that there's not a lot of research that shows that that's the best way to go about it, as opposed to growing local businesses and creating conditions where they can expand, I think it would be wise for us to invite some business people who have grown their businesses. New Chapter comes to mind right away. I'm sure there are many others. Kate would be a great resource for this. Invite some of those people to come in and talk about what it is that they did, what it was that helped them grow, and what it is we could be doing as a board, as a town, to help other businesses grow as well. I think it's, being proactive about that is an important thing. It's so easy to say we want to attract and help and make a business-friendly climate, but you got to walk the walk. The third one, investigating implications associated with being a regional hub, which kind of feeds into the tax conversation earlier about being the hub of this economic region, is to have maybe have Seveds had a bunch of meetings around the region about the data and about what they've learned, but they haven't ever presented to us, and I think it would be helpful for all of us to hear a relatively brief, not the hour long with PowerPoint, but a relatively brief presentation of what they've found about the realities of the economic region that we're in. And so those are just two real specifics. I had wondered about the town plan, but having the planning department here helped a lot with that. And then the last thing, and I think this is really, really important, and I think despite all the work we've got, we need to think about the evaluation process. Somebody, I can't remember who was here. Oh, it was Steve, and talking about a scoring process for the contractors, for the people that submitted bids, the engineering contract. And we need to develop a scoring process, or a matrix when we've evaluated applications, or applications to be on committees, or for the particularly police fire. We went through and kind of checked, there were boxes to check off, and it's not that easy, but it's something that we do need to talk about. We need to have a way for Patrick to be evaluating his employees and for us to be evaluating Patrick that's very conscious and very purposeful, and that's going to give us information that is going to show that we're getting what we need from our employees, and that they know what they're supposed to be doing, and they know what we want from them.
John?
Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. No, I just said
that's a big one.
I think one of the things that affects our goals, is the closing of Entergy. I mean, and it does impound on this a little bit. So, we may have to rethink a few things. So that's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I think it warrants further conversation, what parts we might be able to dig into a little bit, given what else is on the board's plate for the remainder of this year in particular, and to give some thought to timing, because it's not going to happen unless we set aside some time to do that. So if evaluation is really up near the top, that's going to take a chunk of time, and we just want to be able to think about that before it's March.
And there are plenty of people who know how to do these things. They can come in and help us with them. They can come and help us.
I think as to the economic development things that you raised, I hope, Patrick, that we can try to bring back Seveds and to look at those issues in greater detail. As to the 360 evaluation process, the way the system works, we hire and supervise the town manager, and the town manager has sole responsibility for supervising the department heads, and then the department heads supervise their employees, although Patrick and ultimately the permanent town manager is the personnel director. Is that fair to say, Patrick?
That is.
That is.
So
supervise this position. Right. And so as to the 360 evaluation process, the process was very informal, has been very informal since I joined the board.
Right.
And it was kind of like the wheels coming off the wagon last year. There was very little process at all. And for sure, we need to have a deliberate process for doing evaluation going forward. I think the transitional nature of where we stand right now raises questions about how that's really going to play out, because I don't know when we're going to have a full-time town manager in place, and the assistant town manager is supervised by the town manager.
Right.
So I do want to have a 360 evaluation process in place. I don't know exactly what the timing should be. I know that because I was on both the high school board and the town school board, that there is a well-developed evaluation process at the school district.
I might take
Well,
exception with that. But there is one in place.
There is one in place.
Well-developed
I would like to not build this from scratch.
Exactly.
And I do think that we can begin the process of having that discussion. I don't think that it's a pressing need right now, given where we are. The economic development issues, I do think that we should focus on in the short term.
Given what's happened.
Short, medium, and long term. Yeah.
If I can just interject super briefly, I'd be happy to rally Sevitz to come back and speak with the board and to provide somewhat of an update into what we've been able to gather and what we've been able to learn over the course of producing a SEDS. I will say that, and I'm pretty sure this is official, we've decided to delay the SEDS for a month or so that we can give an additional period of emphasis on the shutting down of DY and the regional economic development impacts that may have. But I would be happy to engage them and have them come back and speak to the board about some of the things we've learned. So.
Excellent. Any further discussion about select board goals? Does somebody who's awake want to read the calendar?
I did it last time.
I'll take it. Where is it?
It's right here.
I know it's in here someplace, but it's right. Okay. Let's see. Town of Brattleboro calendar. Thursday, September 5th, 2013, 5:15 to 6:15, the skating rink committee meeting at the Nelson Woodington Skating Facility.
Right.
At 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m., the skate park committee meeting is in the Hannah Cosman meeting room. On Monday, September 9th, from 5 to 7, the energy committee meeting in the Hannah Cosman room. 6 to 9 p.m., the planning commission in the select board meeting room. And from 6 to 7:30, the Rec and Parks Board meeting at the Gibson-Aiken Center. Tuesday, September 10th, 4 p.m. to 5:30 p.m., the Arts Committee in the Select Board meeting room. 4:30 to 6:30 p.m., the Finance Committee in the Hannah Cosman meeting room. 7 to 9 p.m. on Tuesday, the Tree Advisory Committee in the Hannah Cosman meeting room. Friday, September 13th, 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m., the ADA Advisory Committee at the Marlboro College Graduate Center, VCIL Conference Room. Monday, September 16th, 5:15 to 6:15, the West River Park meeting in the Gibson-Aiken Conference Room. Also on Monday, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., the Development Review Board in the Select Board meeting room. And on Tuesday, September 17th, 6:15 to 8:15, in the Select Board meeting in the Select Board meeting room. We're done at 8:15?
Yeah, we're done at 8:15. And there's one other matter, so you could go move to adjourn, but there's one other matter we have to tend to. The annual Vermont League of Cities and Towns business meeting is on Thursday, October 3rd, 2013, and I move to appoint Patrick Moreland as the voting delegate for the town of Brattleboro at the 2014 VLCT annual business meeting. Is there any discussion?
Go for it.
Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. I move to adjourn.
I thought one of us was going to have to go.
Anybody who's in favor?
Aye, man.
Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Thank you, BCTV. Thank you, other members of the press. Thank you to the
David, you have to sign
ASL
this.
interpreters.
Yes. Dave, you have to sign this.